My name was Caleb Vane, and I was born with zero talent. The world's strongest heroes still used my body to store every curse that would have killed them. So when Adrian Royce left me to die and opened a gate to the past, I stole regression from him. Shadow Claim was my only gift. It could pull curses, injuries, and powers from another person. Anything its owner valued appeared behind a lock. At the final battlefield, a skeletal boss was erasing the last city. Adrian led the vanguard generation. I knelt behind him, pulling poison from his body into mine. He walked away while I choked. Then Adrian lowered his sword and opened a white gate. 3 favorite companions moved toward it. I forced myself upright. "What about me?" Adrian called me replaceable and ordered me to buy time. That sentence relabeled years of abuse. A mage dumped contaminated blood into me. A spear officer beat me for sport. The princess beside Adrian accepted my sacrificed eye without thanks. They took. I bled. Then they left me, so I fired Shadow Claim through Adrian's back. Black fingers caught the white light feeding the gate. A valued power should have produced a lock before I could touch it. Nothing appeared. No chain, no keyhole, no resistance. Adrian stumbled and stared at the black hand through his chest. For the first time in years, the fake hero looked scared. "What did you do?" Adrian demanded. "I stopped being useful. I pulled." Regression tore loose as a sphere of white light. The gate flickered. One companion grabbed Adrian's arm. Another shouted my name like she had suddenly remembered I owned one. Too late. Their concern had reached me after the apocalypse. Adrian clawed for the sphere, but Shadow Claim had already wrapped it around my hand. The missing lock told me something ugly. I suspected Adrian had repeated this nightmare until another return felt worse than death. I couldn't prove that. I could prove he had fed my body to the apocalypse so he could choose his own ending. The skeletal scythe came down. The battlefield split. Adrian and his companions vanished beneath white light. The boss's strike reached me as regression entered my body. Then, the world ended. A heartbeat later, I woke in a bed. Morning light hit my face. Cedar-scented air filled my lungs. Both eyes opened. I sat up so hard the blanket flew across the room. A mirror stood beside the bed. The boy inside it had black hair, narrow shoulders, and a face I had buried under years of scars. I was 13. Zero talent apparently came with premium theft benefits? Good to know. The white sphere was gone. Regression had activated once and burned itself out. I had stolen one trip. The reset button was gone. The apocalypse would still come. World erosion would tear pieces of our land into another dimension. Monsters would flood through those wounds. The vanguard generation would rise to fight them. Adrian would gather the same people who had used me. Only now, I remembered everything. I was already living at Cedar Hollow Manor, the estate house Vane used to hide its embarrassing children. The family trial had rejected me. No god had chosen me. My relatives had called me useless and shipped me away. Honestly, exile looked much better after the apocalypse. I touched my right eye. It was whole. I flexed both hands. They worked. Then the bedroom door opened. Walter Pierce stepped inside carrying breakfast. Walter was my steward, my sword instructor, and the closest thing I had ever had to a father. In my first life, he had died before I understood how much he had protected me. He stopped when he saw me sitting upright. "Young master?" Walter lowered the tray. "Are you feeling ill?" I stared at his face. Alive, no gray skin, no blood on his lips, no apology whispered through a dying breath. In the first timeline, Walter confessed while poison destroyed his organs. My older half-brother had offered medicine for Walter's sick daughter if he poisoned my steak. Walter accepted the bottle, served the meal, then ate the poison himself. He died rather than choose between us. Now Walter was standing 3 steps away. The breakfast tray held eggs, bread, and a thick steak. My hands went cold. The poisoned meal had not happened yet, but the order was already moving. I climbed out of bed. Walter shifted in front of the tray. Tiny movement. Huge confession. "When are you planning to use the poison?" I asked. The tray rattled in his hands. Walter's face emptied. "Young master, I don't understand." "Dying." Walter explained it very clearly. His fingers tightened around the silver handles. I walked closer. "Medicine for your daughter. Poison for me. My brother buys one child with the life of another." Walter stepped back. He had faced armed men without blinking. Now he could barely breathe. "How could you know that? I know you take the deal." Walter's eyes closed. "I also know you eat the steak yourself." The tray hit the table. Walter grabbed my shoulders. "Did I hurt you?" "No!" His grip shook. "You died for me," I told him. "That was worse." For one breath, neither of us moved. Walter released me and sank to one knee. "My daughter has months." The healer stopped accepting my requests. "Your half-brother offered the only medicine I could find." Walter confessed the rest without making me drag it out. Earlier that morning, House Vane had gathered to watch my older sister test a new sword form. My older sister was 15, absurdly gifted, and already stronger than heirs twice her age. She had cut through 3 reinforced targets with one swing. The heir behind the offer had watched every elder praise her. Then he pulled Walter into a side corridor and offered the medicine. My brother's plan was petty and practical. My sister's branch threatened his place in the family. I was weaker, isolated, and easy to erase. Killing me would remind everyone that his branch still controlled Cedar Hollow Manor. Walter had not guessed that part. The heir had stated it while pressing the medicine case into his hands. Arrogant people loved explaining themselves when they thought the listener had no options. The jealous heir was Damon Vane, one of House Vane's direct heirs. The genius threatening his status was Sloane Vane, my older sister. Damon had talent, status, and enough insecurity to bully a 13-year-old from another estate. A very impressive resume. I lifted the steak from the tray and dropped it into the fireplace. "You won't poison me," I said. "You also won't die." Walter looked up. "Then my daughter. I'll cure her." He flinched like I had struck him. I understood why. Yesterday I had been a frightened failure who could barely hold a sword. Today I was promising miracles before breakfast. In my defense, death had improved my scheduling. Walter rose slowly. "What happened to you?" "Stopped waiting for House Vane to save me." I crossed the room and pulled on a coat. "Bring a sword. We're opening the library." That same morning, Walter followed me into Cedar Hollow Manor's abandoned library. Dust covered every shelf. House Vane had sent old histories here because nobody important planned to read them. I went straight to the eastern wall. In my first life, this manor had burned during an erosion attack. A hidden passage had appeared after the wall collapsed. By then, everything behind it was ash. I pointed at one stone panel. "Cut there!" Walter studied me, then the wall. "That's solid granite." "Beautiful observation. Cut it." He drew his sword. The first strike cracked the plaster. The second exposed a metal seam. By the fourth, part of the wall fell inward and revealed a narrow stairway. Walter lowered his blade. House Vane's useless estate had been hiding a secret basement. Naturally. We descended beneath the manor. At the bottom waited a black door wrapped in chains. Walter touched one link. "These chains carry a divine seal." I placed my palm against them. Shadow claims stirred. The seal belonged to dead people. Nobody alive was holding it. The black fingers slid through the chains and ripped the binding apart. Metal crashed across the floor. Walter stared at my hand. I gave him the easiest lie available. "A minor god contracted me." "A god chose you after the family trial?" "Apparently the competent gods arrive late." Walter almost smiled. More importantly, he sheathed his sword, gathered the broken chains, and hid them beneath a cloth. If Walter reported shadow claim, House Vane would drag me back, examine me, and turn my second life into another cage. "I saw no divine power," Walter said. I pushed through the door. Blue lights awakened along the walls. Shelves stretched deeper than the manor above us. Each shelf held journals, weapons, and technique manuals sealed with the Vane crest. One rack held a blind swordsman's cane beside hundreds of scratched floor marks. Another contained a cracked gauntlet built for a hand with almost no aura. These people had spent lifetimes forcing weak bodies to perform one impossible action well. Walter opened a journal and stopped. "The main family declared this author incompetent." The next page showed a technique still used by Vane knights under another heir's name. Petty theft apparently ran in the family. I had simply improved the scale. The labels all carried the same word: failure. House Vane had buried every ancestor who lacked natural talent. Those discarded men and women had spent entire lives building methods talented heirs considered beneath them. Look, I need you to understand how dumb my family was. They hid their most useful research because the authors had embarrassing resumes. One journal drew shadow claim toward it. Orson Vane had been carved into the cover. Orson was remembered as the greatest failure in our bloodline. His record told a different story. He had begun with almost no aura. Then he created Bloodfall Venom, a forbidden method that pulled erosion energy into his bloodstream. Every cycle made him stronger. It also cooked his organs, damaged his mind, and eventually drove him mad. By the end, Orson had become the strongest monster House Vane had ever produced. Walter read over my shoulder. This technique killed him. It made him powerful first. That is not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. Turned the page. Orson had failed because the absorbed corruption destroyed his control. I had spent my first life carrying curses without letting them consume other people. Shadowclane could steal control-type curses from stronger owners. Winter-based power could also cool the blood surges. The pieces existed. I only needed to survive long enough to collect them. That night, I began the first bloodfall cycle from Orson's manual. The method required me to circulate a thread of erosion through my blood without letting it settle inside any organ. Miss one turn and the corruption stayed. Accumulate enough, and madness followed. The first thread reached my heart and every muscle seized. I fell off the training mat, struck the basin, and vomited until my throat burned. Walter grabbed the manual. "You proved it works. Stop! I proved it hurts. That distinction is not helping." I took the manual back, wiped my mouth, and started again. On the third attempt, the erosion completed one full cycle before escaping through Shadow Claim. A thin line of aura remained behind. Tiny gain. Horrible price. Exactly the kind of bargain my body could afford. Walter looked unconvinced. My pulse looked dramatically worse. I continued anyway, because stopping would only make the apocalypse painfully punctual and me embarrassingly weak. The apocalypse had already killed me once. I wasn't training for comfort. By sunrise, I sealed Cedar Hollow Manor to every visitor from the main family. Damon's servant arrived before breakfast with another offer for Walter. Walter met him at the front gate. The servant held out a medicine case. "Damon expects your answer." Walter closed the gate on the case. "My answer is no." The servant wedged his boot against the door. "You're sacrificing your daughter for that failure?" Walter drew his sword just enough for steel to show. "Caleb Vane is my true master. Speak about him that way again, and you'll leave without the boot." The servant removed his foot. Excellent learning speed. By afternoon, word reached us that Damon had smashed a table after hearing Walter's reply. The unquestioned heir had lost control of a steward he thought he had purchased. That humiliation would bring him to my door very soon. He wasn't the only person coming. My political fiancée was already on the road to Cedar Hollow Manor, and in my first life, the world had learned to fear her as the White Demon. Later that week at Cedar Hollow Manor, I finished my first real aura breakthrough. Then Sloane Vane split a training post in half across the kingdom. Sloane was my older sister and House Vane's greatest sword genius. A messenger delivered news of her latest achievement while I was still bleeding on the floor. Apparently the universe had excellent comedic timing. I had reached the first meaningful tier with the failure arts. Sloane had reached a level most adults never touched. The gap was disgusting. For a few seconds, I stared at my shaking hands and wondered whether memory could truly beat talent. The apocalypse did not care that I had tried hard. It would arrive on schedule and kill everyone with professional consistency. So I opened Orson's manual and started another bloodfall cycle. Self-pity had terrible combat value. Walter entered the training room before the next surge began. "Young master, your fiancée has arrived." That stopped me. Brielle Hartwell was 12 years old, politically engaged to me, and cursed from birth. Winter Doll suppressed her emotions and filled her body with a cold power no god would touch. Her mother had died during an erosion disaster around Brielle's birth. The Hartwells treated the surviving child like a receipt for the woman they lost. Servants feared touching her. Relatives demanded gratitude whenever they used her engagement value. She learned early that displaying no feelings was safer than displaying the wrong one. In my first life, that same girl became the White Demon. Cities had emptied when she appeared. I needed Winter Doll to stabilize bloodfall venom. I also needed to avoid turning Brielle into that monster again. Minor problem. Very healthy engagement. 5 months earlier, before my memories returned, young Caleb had met her once. I had called Brielle an opportunist who wanted House Vane's name. I learned much later that her family had ordered her to secure the engagement because her family was collapsing. They sent a cursed 12-year-old to bargain for everyone's survival. She arrived expecting more contempt. I washed the blood from my mouth and went to the sitting room. Brielle waited beside the window in a white dress. Her pale hair fell straight down her back. Her face was delicate and completely still. She looked like a doll because the curse had taken every easy expression from her. Walter introduced her again. "Brielle Hartwell, your fiancée." Brielle studied me with clear gray eyes. "You kept me waiting 7 minutes. I was throwing up." Walter coughed into his fist. Brielle nodded once. "That is a valid reason." "Good." Romance was thriving. I pulled out a chair. "Tea?" Her gaze moved to my hand. "You're serving me? Can pour liquid without divine talent." Brielle sat. Walter placed hot tea and macadamia cookies between us. Brielle watched the steam as though it might attack first. Frost formed around the handle before she touched it. I traded her cup for a cooler one. Brielle's gaze followed the exchange. "You remembered that heat hurts me." Remembered after Walter placed the tea down. Walter remained perfectly expressionless. He deserved a raise for that performance. I pushed the plate toward her. "Try one. You insulted me during our last meeting. Remember? You said my family was selling me." "They were." Her fingers stopped above the cookie. I added, "That didn't give me permission to punish you for it." Brielle looked at my face for several seconds. "Are you Caleb Vane?" she asked, inconveniently. The previous Caleb was ruder. The previous Caleb had fewer memories. That answer was dangerously close to the truth. Brielle noticed the pause, but she took the cookie anyway. She bit it once. Her expression remained blank. Then she took a second one. Concrete progress. After tea, I brought her into the garden because Winter Doll reacted badly to enclosed heat. The afternoon air cooled around her sleeves. I had once watched those same frost patterns cover a battlefield. The memory released a burst of killing intent before I could stop it. Flowers bent away from me. Birds left the hedge. Brielle froze beside the fountain. Her hand tightened around the cookie she had brought outside. I pulled the pressure back immediately. Brielle watched me with new caution. Who are you trying to kill? An old mistake. That answer is strange. My week has been strange. She stepped closer instead of retreating. So I tested the reason I needed her here. I have an ability that can remove curses, I told her. Brielle's eyes shifted to my chest. A god contract? That's the simple explanation. Why didn't House Vane announce it? Because House Vane has a long tradition of missing useful things. The failure label gag kept paying rent. I held out my hand. Winter Doll blocks your emotions and your divine contract. I may be able to take it. Brielle stared at my palm. Then she ignored it and touched my wrist. Your pulse is fast, she reported. I just proposed stealing a curse from your soul. You're also kinder than before. You've been vomiting blood. Your eyes look tired. Sudden personality changes can happen before death. I blinked. Did you diagnose me with something? Brielle gave the matter serious thought. Heart disease. Walter turned away before I saw his face. I was 13, cursed, recently dead, and apparently losing to a 12-year-old physician with no medical training. Brielle took my hand with both of hers. Her skin was cold enough to numb my fingers. I won't leave you alone, she said. People with heart disease should be observed. You made that up? I read half a book. Terrifying credentials. Her grip tightened. The joke died there. Brielle had been ordered into a political engagement, insulted by me, and still chose to sit beside someone she thought might be dying. I let shadow claim rise through my palm. Black fingers touched the frost beneath her skin. A silver lock appeared over Winter Doll. Words formed across its surface. Become her friend. I stared at the condition. Marriage paperwork had already tied us together. Shadow claim wanted friendship. Honestly, the curse had standards. Brielle looked down at our joined hands. Did it work? Not yet. Why? Curse doesn't trust me. That seems reasonable. Brutal. Fair, but brutal. I released shadow claim. The condition was clear. Winter Doll stayed with Brielle until she chose me as a friend. Keeping her close could also prevent the future that turned her into the White Demon. My original plan had been simple manipulation. Brielle ruined it by being decent. The next morning at Cedar Hollow Manor, 3 carriages arrived before breakfast. Brielle stepped down from the first one with 2 trunks, a stack of books, and the same blank expression. Walter met her at the entrance. Brielle, are you visiting again? I'm moving in. I walked outside without shoes. You're what? Brielle pointed at me. Observation. Because of the fake heart disease, your symptoms remain concerning. Behind her, Hartwell's servants unloaded another trunk. The family had approved immediately. To them, Brielle living with a Vane heir strengthened the engagement. Nobody bothered asking whether I wanted a tiny curse detective following me through my own house. Walter accepted the luggage with suspicious enthusiasm. Traitor! Brielle took the room beside mine. By lunch, she had rearranged the library chair so she could watch me train through the doorway. She also placed a bell on my desk and ordered me to ring it before every bloodfall cycle. I picked up the bell. This makes me feel 80. You behave older than 13. That was almost suspicious. You complain like an old man. Walter walked away before I could accuse him of agreeing. When I asked why she needed the chair, Brielle opened her book. Your fainting risk increases during exercise. I've never fainted in front of you. You look capable of it. That was Brielle's first real insult. I was proud. Over the next several months, she followed me through Cedar Hollow Manor like a guard assigned to a dangerous toddler. She sat beside Walter during my bloodfall cycles. She placed cold hands against my neck when the venom overheated me. She silently stole half my cookies and denied every accusation. Brielle also began making tiny reports about her own condition. The garden was pleasant. Walter's soup was acceptable. You were less annoying today. Each sentence sounded flat. Each one described a feeling Winter Doll was supposed to erase. I recorded every change because Shadow Claim cared about emotional value. Brielle caught me writing once and asked whether she was an experiment. Partly, I admitted. She stared until I added, a person first. Brielle took my pen and wrote that sentence herself. Once, I woke after training and found her asleep beside me on top of the covers, a survival book still open against her chest. She had waited for my fever to drop. I moved the book, pulled a blanket over her, and returned to training before she woke. She stayed. I kept making room. Nearly 6 months later, I hit my natural ceiling again. Bloodfall venom increased my aura, but talent still controlled how efficiently my body used it. Normal people could train around that problem. I had 1 year before Ravenhall Academy opened, and the future Vanguard generation gathered in one place. I planned to steal what my body lacked. Then an invitation arrived from Northstar Hall. The hall hosted a gathering for noble heirs and young fighters. In my first life, several future heroes had met there. So had people who later made my life miserable. Target-rich environment. Terrible snacks. I placed the invitation on the table. Brielle read it upside down from across the room. They'll insult us. Almost certainly. They call you the God-rejected failure. Very original people. They call me cursed. I folded the invitation. You don't have to come. Brielle's gaze stayed on the paper. Her family expected her to attend because our engagement needed public support. I had no intention of using that order against her. I'm going, I told her. You can stay here. Brielle closed her book. Walter reminded her that North Star would be crowded and hostile. Brielle listened without interrupting. Then she packed the invitation into her own bag before either of us could decide for her. I want to go. Because your family told you? The answer came faster than usual. She walked around the table and placed one hand on the invitation. You gave me cookies. You let me live here. You don't ask me to smile when I can't? Her voice stayed flat, but her choice did not. Being here makes me happy, Brielle said. I think, so I want to stand beside you by my own decision. She looked down at our hands. Frost traced the edge of the invitation, then stopped before covering my skin. Even her curse was learning where she wanted the cold to end. Walter stopped polishing the same glass. I looked at Brielle's hand resting over mine. Winter Doll remained locked. Friendship had to be earned through more than one nice afternoon. Still, both families had lost control of the engagement in that moment. Brielle had chosen, so we went to North Star Hall together. The room waiting for us was packed with nobles, future heroes, and enough arrogant children to power a small city. Every one of them expected the cursed couple to fold. 2 future enemies were already watching. That evening at North Star Hall, Brielle and I entered under open ridicule. The hall was a marble monument to inherited confidence. Young nobles wore family crests, expensive weapons, and expressions suggesting they had personally invented wealth. The first insult reached us before the doors closed. House Vane brought its rejected son. A girl near the stairs looked at Brielle. And he brought the cursed doll. Brielle took a cookie from the refreshment table. I leaned closer. Are you upset? Good. Those cookies look expensive. She took 2 more. Relationship priorities, healthy ones. My genius older sister, Sloane Vane, had visited North Star earlier that year and destroyed every training record in the building. Being her useless brother made me interesting enough to mock and important enough to watch. 2 fighters watched harder than the rest. Troy Maddox was a broad young martial artist who loved testing famous bloodlines. Ronan Gable stood beside him in green formalwear, smiling like an old friend. Ronan was a gifted user of Skywood style. In my first life, he had also been the man who let me fall from a cliff. I kept walking. Before Ronan could approach, a man in a gold coat slid into my path. Julian Marlowe was an eccentric alchemist, already famous for solving problems other healers refused to touch. Years later, people would call him the King of Alchemy. That evening, he was mainly a personal space emergency. Julian leaned close enough to inspect my eyelashes. You're the Vane failure. I prefer Caleb. Caleb is less dramatic, so is standing farther away. Julian circled me once. His eyes stopped on the faint discoloration bloodfall had left along my wrist. Erosion exposure, he murmured. Inside a child. That's irresponsible. You sound interested. I'm deeply interested. Different problem. He grabbed my sleeve and pulled me toward a side room. Brielle watched him take me away and continued eating. I looked back at her. Help? Brielle lifted another cookie. You appear conscious. Cold. Absolutely cold. Minutes later in a private training room, Julian locked the door and tossed me a wooden sword. Show me your aura, he ordered. I caught the weapon. You drag minors into rooms often? Only fascinating ones. That answer worsened everything. Julian drew a steel practice blade. He attacked without warning. The first thrust aimed at my shoulder. I turned it aside. The second cut toward my ribs. I stepped inside his reach and struck his wrist. Julian's smile widened. He increased his aura. The next exchange drove me backward. Julian was stronger, faster, and annoyingly graceful. He expected me to defend until my weaker body failed, so I stopped defending. When his blade came for my neck, I let it graze my collar and trapped his wrist under my arm. My wooden sword snapped against his guard. I kept the broken half. One step later, the jagged edge rested against Julian's throat. His steel blade was still behind my shoulder. The alchemist blinked. I smiled. Do I pass the kidnapping interview? Julian lowered his sword. You're delightful. Try a less alarming word. His attack had been a test. My counter changed his interest into respect, which was exactly what I needed. I removed the broken blade from his neck. I know a method for neutralizing curse contamination, I told him. Help me refine it and I'll share the research. Julian's joking expression disappeared. Where did you find that method? Does the answer affect whether it works? It affects how dramatically I react, then suffer quietly. I gave him enough of Orson's theory to prove the concept. Bloodfall venom used controlled corruption. Julian's future research would become famous for separating useful effects from lethal residue. He understood the value in under a minute. What do you want? Julian asked. Medicines for my body, better control remedies, and a cure for discoloration disease. His eyes sharpened. That last condition is considered incurable. My steward's daughter has it. Julian tapped the flat of his blade against his shoulder. I let him think. Arrogant experts needed time to imagine themselves winning before they accepted impossible work. He finally extended one hand. Fine, bring me your notes, I'll cure the girl. I clasped his wrist. Walter's oldest wound had just gained a real exit. Julian immediately ruined the moment. Should I send flowers with our research proposal? I'll burn your eyebrows. Excellent. We already have chemistry. I left before the alchemy menace could invent matching outfits. Back in North Star Hall, the music had stopped. A uniformed guard was dragging Brielle across the floor by her arm. She had planted both feet and refused to move. Frost spread beneath her shoes, and red fingerprints were already rising on her skin. Release me, Brielle told him. The guard tightened his grip and pulled again. I crossed the hall before the guard noticed me. My kick hit his ribs and launched him through the refreshment table. Silver trays, cakes, and very expensive cookies exploded across the floor. Brielle looked at the wreckage. Her first concern was immediate. The cookies! I'll buy more! The guard rolled onto one elbow. Have you lost your mind? A princess ordered this girl brought upstairs. I stepped between him and Brielle. You're an adult man dragging a 12-year-old through a crowded hall. Heads turned. The guard's face changed as the room heard the situation in plain language. He tried to recover. She resisted a royal summons. Then deliver the summons with your mouth. You have one. Unfortunately. Few nobles laughed. The guard stood, red-faced, and reached for his sword. Nobody moved to support him. 10 seconds earlier, his uniform controlled the room. Now the room had witnesses, and he looked like a grown man threatening a child beside a collapsed dessert table. He removed his hand from the hilt. The princess wants Brielle upstairs, he repeated. Why? She didn't explain. Looked toward the balcony. Ronan stood behind the railing. There was the answer. In my first life, Ronan had wanted access to Sloane. Brielle was simply bait he assumed I would follow. I raised my voice. Tell the princess I'll come if Ronan Gable faces me himself. Ronan's smile tightened. The guard glanced upward, exposing the connection to everyone watching. Beautiful. He had turned a private trap into a public invitation. I checked Brielle's arm. Red fingerprints marked her skin. Why didn't you freeze him? I asked. You told me to wait beside the table. I meant until I returned. I was beside the table. Literal loyalty. Dangerous and weirdly adorable. I patted her head once. Next time, you may break the hand. Brielle nodded. Understood. The guard took another step away. Upstairs at the balcony chamber, Troy Maddox blocked the path to Ronan. Troy was broader than both of us combined and excited enough to bounce on his heels. Sloane Vane's brother, he called. Fight me first, I'm busy. One round. No! Troy swung anyway. His fist carried enough aura to break stone. I shifted half a step and let it pass my ear. He turned the miss into a second strike. That was his mistake. The failure archive contained a close-range technique built for bodies with tiny aura pools. It stored force through the heel, hip, shoulder, and fist, then released everything across 1 inch. Troy saw my knuckles against his chest and laughed. Then I struck. The 1-inch punch folded him backward. His feet left the floor. He hit the wall, slid down it, and stopped moving. The laughter downstairs died. Troy opened one eye, again, stepped over him. Recover from the first one. He tried to stand. His legs disagreed. One obstacle retired. Ronan waited in the center of the chamber with several nobles behind him. Green aura twisted around his arms. He spread both hands. Caleb, I only wanted to talk. You sent a guard to drag Brielle. The princess sent him. Your face was on the balcony before her order reached the floor. Ronan's smile thinned. He had once used that friendly smile for years. Back in my first life at Ravenhall Academy, Ronan had approached the lonely Vane failure and called me his brother. He wanted Sloane's attention. I was the cheap bridge. During a team mission, Ronan ignored my warning and triggered a collapse. 2 students died. He planned to blame me before the academy investigation began. When the cliff broke beneath us, I caught his wrist. Ronan looked down at me and chose his reputation. He let go. Adrian rescued me before I hit the ravine floor. That rescue was how I entered the fake heroes group and became their curse vessel. One betrayal had delivered me into another. Now Ronan stood 10 feet away, still wearing the same rehearsed warmth. I'm not here to discuss Sloane, I told him. His aura sharpened immediately. There it was. I had touched the obsession. Ronan raised one hand. Wooden roots burst through the chamber floor and wrapped around my ankles. Nobles rushed against the walls. You think one lucky punch makes you worthy of mentioning her? Ronan snapped. I think you mention her enough for both of us. He pulled. The roots threw me across the room. I hit a pillar, rolled, and came up with blood in my mouth. Ronan formed a wooden blade around his arm. Choose a weapon. Several training swords lined the wall. I walked past them and snapped a plain branch from one of his summoned roots. Ronan stared at it. You're mocking Skywood style. I'm using its best part. His friends laughed first. Then they noticed Ronan wasn't laughing. Good. Humiliation worked better with advance notice. Ronan attacked. His wooden blade struck from the left. I caught it with the branch and let my wrist bend. The force threw me backward, but the branch survived. He sent roots through the floor. I recognized the pattern from years beside him and stepped into the only empty space. A spike missed my spine. Another wrapped around my arm. I tore free before it tightened. Ronin's confidence began leaking through his attacks. "You've been studying me," he accused. "You talk about yourself a lot." He doubled the aura. Branches filled the chamber and slammed me into the floor. Pain burst through my shoulder. My weak body was reaching its limit. Ronin walked closer while I pushed myself up. "Sloane is the greatest sword genius of our generation," he said. "You're a stain on her name." That insult landed exactly where he wanted. It also gave me the rhythm I needed. I tightened my grip on the branch. "Then stop losing to the stain." Ronin's face twisted. He drove both palms into the floor. The walls cracked. A wooden giant rose behind him, shoulders scraping the ceiling. Its arms were thicker than the pillars. Green aura burned inside its hollow face. The nobles fled into the corridor. Ronin pointed at me. "Kneel!" The giant swung. I ran toward it. "Look, I need you to understand how stupid that appeared. I had a branch. He had built a house with fists. The wooden hand crashed down. I stepped onto one finger, ran along its arm, and reached the shoulder. Ronin sent roots after me. One cut my leg. Another tore my coat. I kept moving. The branch in my hand came from the giant's own body. Ronin could feel every contact through Skywood's style. That made the disrespect personal. I planted one foot against the giant's neck. Then I used the Unity Strike. The technique came from another Vane ancestor with no talent. He had repeated one sword motion for 80 years until his body could align every muscle, breath, and drop of aura into a single cut. Gifted heirs had mocked him because the technique looked ordinary. House Vane really did collect bad opinions like trophies. My branch moved once. For half a second, nothing happened. Ronin laughed. Then a black line crossed the wooden giant from shoulder to waist. The entire construct split apart. Its upper body crashed through the balcony rail. Ronin's laughter disappeared under breaking wood. The branch remained in my hand. Ronin stared at it longer than he stared at me. I dropped from the collapsing giant and landed in front of Ronin. His aura had vanished with the construct. He swung his bare fist. I hit him across the face with the branch. Ronin fell in front of the nobles he had invited to watch me kneel. For one perfect second, nobody spoke. Then Julian leaned over the upstairs railing. "I'm keeping him," the alchemy menace announced. "You are not," I told him. The crowd finally moved. One noble picked up Ronin's broken crest pin. Another stepped around him to ask Walter's useless young master for a duel. The same people who had laughed at Brielle now opened a path for her. Useful. Brielle reached me as my knees failed. She tried to catch me, misjudged my weight, and we both hit the floor. Her face stayed blank beneath mine. "You fainted," she reported. "I noticed." "I predicted this. Please enjoy being right after I regain circulation." She placed one cold hand against my neck and called Walter. Behind her, Ronin pushed himself onto one elbow. His gaze remained fixed on the branch beside my hand. The prodigy had lost to the exact material he believed belonged to him. Worse, doubt had entered his face. Shadow Claim reacted faintly from inside my chest. Ronin possessed a powerful recovery ability. If his pride in that power collapsed far enough, a future lock might open. The revenge had paid. The next theft had started. I passed out before I could enjoy the room changing sides. By the next morning, every noble family in Westmark Kingdom had heard some version of the story. Most versions gave me 6 branches, 2 giants, and a secret god. Rumors were doing cardio. Julian sent a note confirming he had begun Walter's cure. Troy requested another match. Ronin locked himself inside a training room and started rebuilding the technique I had broken. My public win had created allies, targets, and one very angry family heir. I thought humiliating Ronin in front of the whole hall was the dangerous part. Then Damon came to Cedar Hollow Manor with a 3-star death zone and the smile of a man who had finally found a respectable way to kill me. 1 week after Northstar Hall, I was training at Cedar Hollow Manor when Brielle complained about my sweat. She sat beside the practice floor with a book open. "You smell worse after the branch technique." "I defeated a wooden giant. You also landed on me." "That sounds like teamwork." Brielle turned one page. It felt like a falling cabinet. Walter coughed into his hand and looked away. The household had become dangerously comfortable insulting me. Ronin's humiliation had also produced something useful. Shadow Claim had reacted when doubt entered his face. His recovery gift was still locked, but pride could weaken ownership, just like trust could strengthen it. So Ronin had become a future target. First, I needed to survive the target walking through my front door. Damon Vane entered the training yard without waiting for permission. My jealous half-brother wore House Vane's field uniform and the smile of a man carrying legal murder instructions. He looked at my sweat-soaked shirt, then at Brielle sitting beside me. Damon's smile tightened. "You've gotten comfortable." "I'm practicing for Ravenhall." You still think you'll pass the entrance exam? I wiped my face with a towel. I heard you were studying too. Very brave. Brielle lowered her book. Damon's jaw moved once. Beautiful. The heir had arrived to threaten me and got academically bullied before the speech. He tossed a sealed mission notice onto the floor. House Vane has assigned you to a 3-star erosion zone at Blackridge Mountain. You'll observe my unit as a trainee. Walter stepped forward. Caleb has no field certification. Damon did not look at him. He wanted recognition. He can earn it. The order was obvious. 3-star zones killed trained adults. Sending a 13-year-old failure into one gave Damon 2 good outcomes. I died or I survived by obeying him. Too bad for him, I needed corrupted energy. I picked up the notice. When do we leave? Damon blinked. He expected fear. I gave him scheduling. Tomorrow morning, he answered. Go. Walter caught my arm after Damon turned away. Young master, that zone is a trap. I know. Brielle closed her book and stood. Then don't go. Need a real erosion core for bloodfall. You vomit enough inside the manor. Thank you for the medical report. Brielle stared until I stopped smiling. Don't faint again, she said. That request followed me into the mountain. The next morning at Blackridge, Damon led 6 veteran knights through the red boundary mist. I walked behind him as the official trainee and the unofficial reason everyone expected trouble. The zone looked like a burned forest trapped beneath a red sky. Erosion had twisted the trees into hooked shapes. Black moss moved against the wind. Damon raised one hand. Stay inside formation. Anything outside the march trail is hostile. A knight stepped toward a patch of pale grass. Stop, I told him. The knight hesitated. Damon looked over his shoulder. Did I ask for instruction? The grass eats heat. If his leg touches it, his blood temperature drops and the roots pull him under. The knight tested the edge with his spear. The metal frosted instantly. Roots snapped around the spearhead and dragged it beneath the ground. He stepped back. Damon's order had controlled the unit 10 seconds earlier. After that, the knight watched me. We kept moving. I identified hollow-eyed wolves hiding inside dead trunks. I warned the rear guard before a mist leech dropped from the canopy. When the path split, I chose the route without blue fungus because the fungus marked a nesting tunnel. Each correct call made the knights faster. Each correct call made Damon quieter. By midday, one of his own men asked me which ridge was safe. Damon answered first. The left. I pointed right. The left ridge collapses when it senses aura. Damon stared at me. You've never entered Blackridge. I've entered worse places. He chose the left ridge. The first knight stepped onto it. The ground cracked. I caught the back of his armor and pulled him away as the entire slope folded into a red pit. Nobody asked Damon for directions after that. Look, I need you to understand his problem. Damon had brought me there to look helpless. Instead, his unit was treating me like the adult in the room. His ego was getting cooked in a very professional uniform. At the mountain's inner slope, I found the corrupted stream I needed. Bloodfall venom could absorb erosion energy and leave usable aura behind. The price was simple. Miss one circulation turn and the corruption settled inside my organs. I knelt beside the stream and pressed 2 fingers into the red water. Walter's training room had given me threads. Blackridge gave me a flood. Corruption rushed through my hand. My heartbeat doubled. The trees vanished from my sight. Every sound arrived at once. Armor scraping, breath catching, blood moving beneath 6 sets of skin. Then pain punched through my stomach. I vomited blood across the stones. One knight reached for me. Damon blocked him. Let the failure prove himself. Brielle's request flashed through my mind. Don't faint again. I drove my palm against the ground. The blind ancestor's journal had described a perception art built for someone who could not trust his eyes. 6th sense spread aura beyond the body and separated danger from noise. I forced one thin ring of aura outward. The mountain returned in pieces. My breath, the stream, Damon's boots, a monster moving beneath the ridge. I caught the corruption before it reached my heart and pushed it through the bloodfall cycle. The surge slowed. Black vapor left my mouth. A heavier layer of aura remained inside my veins. I stood. The knight beside me lowered his hand. You controlled it. Damon's face hardened. Anyone can survive one surge. The ridge behind him opened its eyes. Faces covered the rock. Human faces. Animal faces. Half-finished faces with empty skin where eyes should have been. The 1,000-faced demon unfolded from the mountain and sealed the red sky above us. The 3-star mission had been feeding a much stronger boss. The demon screamed. Every borrowed face opened its mouth. 2 knights collapsed before drawing their swords. Damon finally moved like the heir he claimed to be. He drew his flaming blade, and inferno erupted around the steel. The fire carved through the demon's chest. For 1 second, Damon looked vindicated. Then the wound closed with a new face over it. The demon copied the shape of his flames. Red mouths swallowed the next strike. A blank wave crossed the nearest knight, and the man's face vanished into smooth skin. He clawed at his own head and fell. The formation broke. Damon ordered retreat. The boundary behind us had become a solid wall of red mist. We were sealed inside until the boss died. The thousand-faced demon charged again. I used sixth sense to drag 2 knights beneath its arm. Damon burned another opening. The monster adapted faster each time. Within minutes, 4 knights were down. Damon's flame had weakened. My new aura shook inside my blood. "We can't kill it separately," I told him. Damon wiped blood from his mouth. "You have a better idea?" "One strike. Your fire. My technique." His eyes narrowed. "You expect me to hand Inferno to you?" "Expect you to decide whether pride matters more than breathing." The demon tore another face from the ground. Damon looked at the fallen knights. Then he looked at me. I gave him the one pressure point he could never ignore. "Sloane could control shared flame," I said. "Can you?" That was a lie. Sloane had never taught me anything about Inferno. Damon only heard her name. His pride took the bait immediately. He seized my wrist. Inferno poured from his palm into mine. Shadow claims stirred. The first condition moved. Damon had willingly lent me the power. Flame ran through my bloodfall aura and turned black. The heat should have burned my arm. Sixth sense mapped the flow before it escaped. I compressed the fire along the branch-sized training blade still strapped at my waist. Damon stared at the black edge. "How are you controlling it? Better than you?" His grip tightened. That answer hurt him more than the boss had. The second condition moved. He saw that my control exceeded his own. The thousand-faced demon spread across the ridge. Hundreds of mouths pulled air inward for another scream. I stepped forward. The Unity Strike needed one complete alignment through heel, hip, shoulder, breath, aura, and Inferno. Damon shouted, "Don't waste my flame!" I swung once. Black fire crossed the entire ridge. The scream stopped. Every stolen face split along the same line. The demon's core opened inside the cut, and Inferno burned through it before the creature could adapt. The sealed sky broke. Red mist rushed upward. Daylight hit the mountain. The thousand-faced demon collapsed in one piece, then crumbled into black ash. The surviving knights stared at me instead of Damon. One of them lowered his head. "Young Master Caleb saved us." Damon heard the title. He also saw Inferno still burning in my hand. The third condition moved. His pride broke. Shadow claim closed around the flame. Inferno became mine. I released the last borrowed heat and merely fell. My blood felt boiled. My aura was almost empty. Damon noticed. Of course he did. The jealous heir had survived the monster, watched me use his signature power better, and heard his own knights praise me. He still had time to leave alive. Naturally, he made it worse. After the sky cleared, Damon drove his sword toward my back. Sixth sense caught the blade before the sound reached me. I turned and trapped his wrist. Damon's face twisted. "Give it back." I opened my palm. Black flame rose between us. His expression changed. "Inferno is mine," I told him. Damon pulled against my grip. Nothing answered him. No flame, no heat. The power he had built his whole identity around had stopped recognizing him. He attacked with his free hand. I struck his ribs with the 1-inch punch. Bone cracked. Damon hit the ground beside the demon's remains. He tried to rise. I kicked his sword away. For a moment, I remembered wanting an older brother when I was small. That boy had disappeared long before Blackridge. Damon spat blood onto my boot. "You were born useless, and you still lost everything to me." He lunged again. I caught a strip of corrupted monster flesh from the ground and forced it between his teeth. Bloodfall taught me exactly what untreated erosion did inside an unprepared body. Damon's aura convulsed. Black lines spread across his throat. He clawed at the ground, tried to summon a flame he no longer owned, and stopped moving. No apology arrived. I had not asked for one. Back at the main Vane estate that evening, the surviving knights told the family how Damon held the line against an abnormal boss. I supplied the final version. Damon had lent me Inferno for one desperate strike. He had then forced corrupted flesh into himself to keep the demon from regenerating. The sacrifice killed him and saved the unit. The knights had been unconscious during our final exchange. They remembered his fire and my finishing blow. The lie fit the pieces they had seen. House Vane accepted the story. Heroic grief looked much better on the family than heir jealousy. Damon received a memorial blade. His branch received sympathy. I kept Inferno. When bloodfall mixed with it, the flame burned black. Sixth sense had awakened. My aura had grown. The family failure returned from the death zone as its only useful survivor. Damon lost command, power, life, and even ownership of his final story. I was being petty. He tried to buy Walter, murder me, and stab me after I saved him. I thanked him by making his obituary respectable. The victory created a problem before the memorial candles finished burning. An abnormal erosion zone required investigation. A field investigator waited beside Damon's ceremonial sword. She wore a dark uniform and an ordinary human face. Then she turned her neck. A black star marked the skin beneath her ear. I had seen that mark in my first life. The investigator was a monster wearing a human face. At the main Vane estate, Damon's memorial had barely ended when the field investigator asked to question me. She looked human. The black star beneath her ear ruined the performance. That mark belonged to a world corruptor, so I skipped the polite interview. "I can erase your immortality," I told her. The investigator stopped beside Damon's ceremonial sword. Every knight in the room went still. They heard a 13-year-old threatening an official. I heard myself making a job offer to a monster who could fold the building. In my defense, normal networking had never worked for me. Her eyes turned red. The human skin split into dark ash and peeled away. Beneath it stood a pale woman in a black dress, with the same star burning at her throat. Pressure filled the chamber. The memorial candles went out. The knights dropped to one knee without understanding why. Scarlet Graves was an immortal world corruptor. Her true body had stopped moving centuries ago, so she watched the world through marked servants and temporary avatars. In my first life, I had aimed shadow claim at her immortality. A wall of locks had appeared. Scarlet valued death. She simply valued her power more than a weak curse vessel could overcome. This time, I offered a different route. Scarlet stepped close. "You recognize my mark. I recognize your problem. You're very confident for a child standing inside my reach. I'm very motivated for someone who has already died once." Her gaze sharpened. That line told her too much. It also kept her interested. Scarlet raised one finger beneath my chin. "Are you a regressor? Remember a future that ended badly." "How badly?" "The world ended." The chamber went silent after that. Scarlet studied the black flame under my skin. "You absorbed erosion without becoming a beast, temporarily. You stole Inferno." "Correct. And you think that qualifies you to take my immortality? Eventually." Scarlet smiled. The pressure doubled. My knees bent. Bloodfall heated inside my veins. Sixth sense spread through the floor and showed me every angle of escape. There were none. Good. Now the deal had honesty. "I'm weaker than you," I said. "My body is mediocre. My talent is worse. Train me until that changes. When I become strong enough, I'll take the immortality you cannot discard." Scarlet's smile disappeared. The one reward she wanted was the one no army could give her. Death. Scarlet could crush kingdoms and rebuild torn flesh. Ending herself was the one thing her power refused to do. Scarlet lowered her pressure. "You're offering to become my executioner." "I'm offering results. You may fail, then train me better." For several seconds she stared at me. Then the immortal extended one hand. "Fine," Scarlet answered. "Become strong enough to kill me." I clasped her wrist. The world's most dangerous investigator had become my master. Scarlet immediately ruined the dignity of the moment. "You're still mediocre. You accepted me 30 seconds ago. I accepted the possibility of improvement." There it was. My new master believed in me with the warmth of a tax notice. Before we left, my mother intercepted us in the estate corridor. She was a senior Vane knight and the woman who had allowed the family to exile me. She looked at my blackened veins, then at Damon's empty memorial room. "Your father sensed something inside the forbidden zone," she told me. "He wants you held at the main estate until the investigation ends." House Vane had ignored me when I was weak. One stolen flame later, they had discovered parental concern. Amazing timing. "I'm returning to Cedar Hollow," I said. "My mother blocked the doorway. That wasn't a request." Scarlet's red eyes moved toward her. The corridor temperature dropped. I stepped past my mother before the immortal turned family drama into a mass funeral. "Tell father he can visit the son he exiled," I said. "He doesn't get to collect me after Damon failed." No guard followed. That evening on the road, Scarlet tested several travel bodies. The first avatar wore a jeweled black gown and drew every eye in 3 villages. I looked at her once. "You're supposed to be hiding." "I'm hiding my true body. You are wearing enough jewelry to ransom a castle?" Scarlet glanced down. "Mortals notice clothing? You have been immortal too long." She discarded the avatar and moved into a black crow. The bird landed on my shoulder and pecked my ear. "Better disguise. Worse personality. Behave at the manor," I warned her. "There's a white bird waiting there." Scarlet pecked me again. Back at Cedar Hollow Manor, Brielle met us in the entrance hall. She wore white. The moment she saw me, she checked my face, chest, and hands for injuries. Then, she noticed the crow. Scarlet spread her wings like an ancient terror. Brielle picked her up and hugged her against her coat. The immortal froze. I covered my mouth. Brielle looked at me. "Is this yours?" Scarlet's beak opened in outrage. "My master," I answered. Brielle tightened the hug. "She's small." A world corruptor who had outlived empires had just been demoted to household pet. "Beautiful!" Walter waited until Brielle carried Scarlet toward the sitting room. Then he handed me Julian's message. "The cure is ready," Walter said, "and Brielle tried to leave for Blackridge twice while you were gone." Brielle stopped in the doorway. Walter continued. She packed food, winter clothes, and 3 books about blood loss. I was prepared, Brielle replied. For what? I asked. You're fainting. The joke landed, but shadow claim moved beneath my skin. I touched Brielle's wrist. The silver lock over Winter Doll appeared. Become her friend had vanished. The first condition was complete. Brielle saw the black fingers and watched my face. Did the curse change? Can you remove it now? Another lock remains. She accepted that answer without pulling away. Scarlet pecked Brielle's sleeve until she released the crow. The black bird landed on my head. Whitebird versus Black Crow had begun. A few days later, Julian arrived carrying 3 boxes and the confidence of a man about to make my day worse. The alchemy menace placed a clear vial in Walter's hands. This cures discoloration disease, Julian announced. 1 dose, no relapse. Walter's fingers shook around the glass. Julian looked at me. Ronan Gable has also resumed training. Apparently losing to landscaping motivated him. Good. His pride needs further damage. Keep him alive. Julian's smile widened. You collect people strangely. Learned from you. He handed Scarlet a page of elixir formulas. Scarlet scanned it once, then corrected 3 lines with 1 claw. Julian forgot to breathe. Then he snatched the page back, suddenly desperate to prove he could make Scarlet's corrected elixir. My body needed a stronger foundation before Ravenhall. Julian could make it, but only 2 ingredients mattered. Sun Snow was a heat-bearing fungus found in the northern Hartwell Mountains. The golden dragon herb was the grand prize at an Imperial Youth Tournament. The herb pulled me toward the Empire. Sun Snow pulled Brielle north. Julian opened the second box. You'll need a disguise for the Empire. Inside waited a purple potion. I should have made him drink it first. Instead, I swallowed it. My hair turned silver, my face softened, my uniform shrank around a much smaller frame. Brielle inspected me from every angle. Julian clasped both hands. Adorable! I raised shadow claim. Black fingers wrapped around his ankle. The alchemy menace jumped onto a chair. Temporary! It is temporary! How temporary? 2 hours! Can ruin your life in 1. Brielle touched my altered hair. It's an improvement. Betrayal from inside the home. Tragic. Scarlet's training began before the potion wore off. She attacked from blind angles while I used Sixth Sense to read movement before impact. Every wrong prediction earned a strike from her wing, cane, or borrowed hand. Every correct read became part of Predictive Blade. Predictive Blade was brutally simple: sense the attack, then cut where the body had to move next. Scarlet also taught me 2 emergency tricks. Through an avatar, she could lend a thin fragment of temporary immortality. It cost life force and could only keep someone alive briefly. The trick was useful, limited, and expensive. She also showed me Curse Steel, a way to harden 1 limb with compressed corruption. It could block a lethal strike. The limb might not survive the payment. I practiced the shape without activating the cost. No one gets to complain later that my bad decisions lacked preparation. Before departure, Walter brought us to a small house near Cedar Hollow. His daughter lay beneath 3 blankets, her skin stained dark by the disease Damon had used as a leash. Walter gave her Julian's vial. The discoloration faded from her fingers first, then her face. Her breathing settled. She opened her eyes and recognized him. Walter dropped beside the bed. He covered his mouth, but the sound still escaped. I looked away and gave him the room. Later, Walter found me outside. He knelt in the snow. My daughter will live, he said. So will I, until you permit otherwise. Stand up, Walter did. You already died for me once, I told him. Don't make it a habit. He laughed through the tears. Walter pulled Damon's old medicine case from his coat, set it in the snow, and crushed it under his heel. Then he returned to his daughter alive. Before sunset, Walter arranged a merchant cover to cross the Imperial border. Julian packed the tournament disguise and enough medicine to keep Bloodfall from ruining the trip. Brielle prepared to travel north with a Hartwell party for Sun Snow. At the manor gate, she handed me a wrapped stack of sandwiches. You'll forget to eat, she said. I survived the apocalypse. You forget lunch. I tucked the food into my bag. 1 month, then come home, Brielle nodded. Win the herb. Find the fungus. Scarlet's crow landed between us and stole half a sandwich. The immortal crow had chosen crime. Then, our routes split. I headed toward the Evermont Empire for the Golden Dragon herb. Brielle headed north for Sun Snow. The moment we split, each route lost half its protection. 3 days into the Imperial Road, my safe merchant route produced invisible bandits. Scarlet rode on my shoulder as a black crow. Walter's merchant contact drove the wagon. The road ahead looked empty until Sixth Sense caught 7 heartbeats inside the trees. 1 heartbeat was tied to the ground. I raised my hand. Stop the wagon! The driver pulled the reins. A blade crossed the space where his neck had been. The attacker remained invisible. I drew my sword and cut through the distortion. A masked man appeared with his wrist split open. 3 more rushed from the ditch. They used short lunges, hidden wire, and soundless footwork. I knew that style. The Mad Dog line had trained killers I remembered from my first life. They were not supposed to operate openly for years. Someone had activated the network early. A bandit threw a smoke charge beneath the wagon. I spread sixth sense through the cloud and struck each heartbeat in order. One went down with a broken knee. Another lost his weapon. The third tried to use the captive girl as a shield. I cut the rope around her wrists before his knife reached her throat. Then black flame crossed his chest and dropped him beside the road. Scarlet pecked the final attacker's temple. The man staggered. I ended the ambush before the smoke cleared. The captive girl crawled behind the wagon. Who are you? At the moment? A merchant's troublesome son. She looked at the bodies. Very troublesome, the driver muttered. I searched one attacker and found a hound-shaped scar burned into his shoulder. Mad Dog. Brielle was traveling north while their network was moving early. I could not stop thinking about that all the way to the Empire. That evening at tournament registration, I used Julian's disguise potion and signed the bracket as Mason Crow. Silver hair, altered face, black coat, no Vane crest. The alias was supposed to hide me long enough to win the Golden Dragon herb. It lasted 12 minutes before a 7-year-old princess started investigating me. Piper Evermont, the Empire's 4th princess, ran through the registration courtyard wearing 2 different shoes and carrying a wooden spoon like a royal weapon. The attendants behind her looked exhausted. That chaos was an act. Piper was a hidden genius. She pretended to be foolish because intelligent children became targets in imperial succession fights. She saw me and stopped pretending for half a second. Her eyes traced the bloodfall corruption beneath my disguise. Then Piper stepped backward off the fountain ledge. I caught her before she hit the stones. She stared directly into my face. You have villain eyes. You fell on purpose. You caught me on purpose. That is usually how catching works. Piper tapped my nose with a spoon. Suspicious. Her attendant rushed over and took her from my arms. Piper waved while being carried away. Tiny detective, huge problem. Every inn near the arena was full, so when an old woman offered me a spare room, I accepted because Scarlet sensed no immediate trap. The trap was sitting at the dinner table. Piper swung her legs beneath the chair. Hello, Mason Crow. I turned toward the door. The old woman locked it behind me and left. Piper pushed a bowl of soup across the table. Sit! You're 7! I'm also a princess! Still 7? She narrowed her eyes. You speak like Westmark nobility. I sat. She had heard one word at registration. That was enough. Piper leaned closer. House Vane teaches that clipped ending. Mason Crow is an alias. The accent belongs to Caleb Vane. The spoon stopped halfway to my mouth, caught by pronunciation. Amazing! I had survived an apocalypse and lost to grammar. Piper smiled. Villain confirmed. Are you arresting me? That answer came fast. She dropped the childish voice. My 3rd sister changed 6 months ago. Veronica Evermont knows things she shouldn't. People who served me for years started reporting to my 2nd brother. Veronica was the Empire's changed 3rd princess. I suspected she had inherited memories from Adrian's regression, but suspicion was all I had. The visible pawn was Malcolm Evermont, the 2nd prince. He controlled part of the palace guard and apparently the Blackwing Syndicate. Piper watched my reaction. You know something! I know your family should not trust sudden personality improvements. Personal experience? Extensive. I warned her to recheck every spy report, and every person who claimed a threat had already been handled. Piper agreed to keep my identity quiet. The next morning in the tournament preliminaries, 100 fighters entered the arena. The top 4 advanced. I removed the first opponent with 1-inch force. The second lost his sword to Predictive Blade. The third tried to surround me with 5 friends. Tournament rules allowed temporary alliances. They also allowed me to break the alliance in 8 seconds. By the time the dust settled, the crowd had noticed my black coat, silver hair, and habit of appearing behind people. Someone shouted, Blackwing! The name spread. Blackwing was the Empire's legendary assassin title. I had registered as Mason Crow. The crowd decided I was a syndicate killer wearing a fake name. My disguise had become a more famous identity than my real one. Honestly, Julian would have been proud. That was the problem. I let the rumor grow. A mistaken identity could draw out the person who actually owned it. After the preliminary, a bandaged young man bowed beside the arena tunnel. Blackwing, he whispered. The 2nd prince sends his greeting. I gave Scarlet one look. The crow landed on his shoulder. Red light flashed through his eyes. Under Scarlet's hypnosis, the bandaged man explained that Malcolm now controlled the Blackwing Syndicate through a stolen command object. He also described orders that had changed after Veronica began advising from the background. That was enough for me to suspect Veronica. It was nowhere near enough to call her the mastermind. Malcolm remained the visible prince wearing borrowed authority. Piper rechecked her intelligence that afternoon. 2 trusted agents had vanished. A third had filed the same report twice using different names. Meanwhile, I advanced through the tournament while the crowd chanted Blackwing louder each round. Arena workers cleared the tunnels when they heard Blackwing. The real owner of the title would hear it too. So that night, I entered the arena catacombs alone and let her follow. The real Blackwing attacked from inside the wall. A pale blade slid through stone toward my spine. Sixth sense caught it. I turned, trapped the wrist, and discovered the blade had grown from the attacker's forearm. More blades opened along her elbows and shoulders. She wore black bandages and moved without breathing. I blocked 3 cuts, read the 4th with predictive blade, and drove her into a pillar. The stone broke. She stood again. "Imposter!" the woman hissed. "You should blame the crowd!" She launched a storm of hidden blades. I burned the nearest ones with Inferno and closed the distance. Shadowclaim wrapped around her chest. A second pulse answered from somewhere far beneath the palace. Her heart. The attacker froze when I touched the bond. "Mara Quill," I said. Her eyes changed. Mara was an ancient necromancer and the true Blackwing. She had removed her own heart centuries ago. The Imperial faction held it and used ownership of the heart to force her obedience. Her necromancy remained hers. I targeted the leash. Mara pressed one body blade against my throat. "How do you know my name? I know you hate working." Her blade stopped. "Good. Correct pressure point." "I have worked for this family for 1,000 years, Mara whispered. "You sound ready for retirement." "I was ready 900 years ago." The overworked necromancer lowered the blade. Honestly, immortality kept producing the same crisis, endless life, and even longer employment. Terrible package. "The Empire owns your heart," I told her. "Shadowclaim can take the control bond. Help me stop the assassination, and I'll return the heart to you." Mara stared at the black fingers around the invisible link. "You could keep it. I already have one immortal woman insulting me daily. I don't need another prisoner." Scarlet pecked my head from the shadows. Mara almost smiled. Then she opened her hand. "Take the bond." Consent weakened the control immediately. Shadowclaim pulled. Far beneath the palace, ownership of Mara's external heart changed hands. The necromancer sagged against the pillar. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Imperial command could not move her body. Mara rubbed the place above her missing heart, then gave me the assassination plan. Malcolm's faction planned to kill Piper's swordmaster, Tessa Breen. Mara would animate Tessa's corpse and use it to approach Piper. Then Kendra Rook would finish the princess during the confusion. Kendra was the Imperial spear officer who had abused me at Ravenhall in my first life. She had beaten the curse vessel for entertainment and stayed loyal to Adrian even after the world began dying. Mara showed me the planned kill point. Tessa would cross a palace bridge before the tournament final. Kendra would strike first. Mara would receive the body. The next morning, while I prepared for the final, Kendra made her move on the palace bridge. Tessa told me later exactly what happened. Kendra stopped her and asked whether Adrian had returned. That question confirmed Kendra remembered the first timeline. When Tessa refused to answer, Kendra drove a spear through her heart. Mara's crows carried the body below the palace before the guards arrived. By the time I entered the final that afternoon, Piper's swordmaster looked dead, and the assassins believed their corpse weapon was ready. Now we had a target, a time, and one very arrogant former abuser. At the final arena, I faced Theo Holt. Theo was a 14-year-old commoner and a future vanguard fighter. He had earned every step without a family name. He also believed Mason Crow was a trapped assassin who needed saving. Theo drew his sword. "Leave Blackwing after this. I can help you." "You're offering career advice during a final?" "I'm offering friendship." That made him harder to mock. The bell rang. Theo used 10-step heaven, a gliding sword style that changed direction without wasting momentum. Most fighters saw 10 separate attacks. Sixth Sense saw one continuous path. I blocked the first step, slipped onto the fourth, and let him build speed through the seventh. He expected me to retreat from the 10th. I stepped inside it. The 1-inch punch struck his chest. Theo flew backward, landed on both feet, and stayed upright for one stubborn second. Then his knees folded. The arena erupted. I had won the Golden Dragon Herb. Theo looked up from the floor. "Will you consider my offer? I'm already planning to attend Ravenhall." His eyes widened. "Meet me there as a friend," I told him. Theo smiled despite losing. "Deal." Theo offered friendship without a lock or scheme. I almost found that suspicious. The tournament platform opened for the award ceremony. Malcolm entered above the arena, dressed like a prince who believed every secret weapon still belonged to him. He applauded Mason Crow and smiled toward the tunnel where Kendra waited. Then the Black Crest guards surrounded him. Their captain displayed one assassination order recovered from a Blackwing safe house. Malcolm's seal sat at the bottom. The document tied Malcolm publicly to the plot, but it had not saved Piper. Malcolm still smiled. He watched Kendra's tunnel and tapped the control seal at his belt. He clearly expected his hidden weapons to keep working. Then, Piper walked into the arena. Tessa Breen walked beside her. "Alive!" Malcolm's smile vanished. Kendra stepped from the tunnel and stopped so sharply her spear scraped stone. The corpse target looked directly at her. After my warning, Piper had rechecked the compromised spy network and learned which bridge Kendra expected Tessa to cross. She kept the root and turned it into bait. Before Tessa stepped onto that bridge, Scarlet's crow lent her a thin fragment of temporary immortality. Kendra's spear still pierced her heart. Tessa stayed alive long enough for Mara to hide the body, repair the damage, and return her to Piper. The cost drained Scarlet's avatar until several feathers turned gray. Limited. Expensive. Enough! Tessa pointed her sword toward the Blackcrest officers who had helped the plot. Those three served the second prince's private command. The accused guards reached for weapons. Tessa attacked first. Steel crossed the platform. Piper's loyal guards joined her. The palace spies lost their positions before the official order could protect them. Kendra ignored the fight and squeezed the control seal linked to Mara's heart. Nothing happened. She squeezed again. Mara entered from the opposite tunnel, yawning. Kendra's face emptied. Obey me! The overworked necromancer checked her nails. I retired! Kendra looked from living Tessa to free Mara to Malcolm surrounded by guards. Every hidden lair had failed in public. Her confidence lasted exactly one breath. Then she made it personal. Kendra hurled her spear at Piper. The weapon crossed the arena faster than the guards could react. I moved before the crowd understood she had thrown it. Predictive blade showed the line. Sixth sense caught the second twitch in Kendra's shoulder. I intercepted the spear with my sword. The impact drove the blade through my shoulder and knocked me across the platform. Piper fell behind me. Kendra drew a second spear and charged. She recognized my stance then. Caleb? I ripped the first spear free and let black flame cover the wound. You hit harder at Ravenhall, I told her. Her eyes widened at the reference. Her grip loosened, and she looked past me as if Adrian should have been standing there too. Kendra thrust again. I redirected the point. Tessa struck Kendra's wrist. Mara's dead hands rose from the floor and locked both ankles. Kendra crashed in front of the princess she had tried to murder. Only after the attack failed did the Blackcrest guard move. They clamped irons on Kendra while the captain locked Malcolm's wrists with the same order he had dismissed. Malcolm stopped giving orders because nobody obeyed him anymore. Piper's surviving officers turned their backs. Tessa stood alive beside the supposed corpse master. Mara stretched like a woman leaving a very long shift. Kendra had lost the target, the heart, the prince, the room, and her freedom. She kept asking where Adrian was while the guards dragged her away. I had no answer for her. I only knew someone from the final group had reached this timeline with memories, and Veronica remained the ugliest suspect. Before I left the platform, I warned Piper. Malcolm was the sibling we caught. Do not assume he acted alone. Piper looked toward the royal balcony. Veronica? Suspect her. Suspect her. Suspicion is not proof. Trust actions, not family titles. Minutes after the reversal, Mara met me beneath the arena. She placed the golden dragon herb in my hand. The gold-veined leaves gave off enough aura to numb my fingers. Payment, Mara said. I opened Shadow Claim and released the ownership bond. Far below us, her external heart returned fully to her control. Mara blinked. You actually returned it. Said I would. That is terrible hostage management. I collect allies. Furniture is easier. Mara's shoulders dropped for the first time since we met. She tucked her body blades away and stood beside me instead of guarding the exit. Then a messenger found us. He carried Hartwell colors and blood on one sleeve. Brielle Hartwell is missing, he said. Assassins attacked the northern expedition. She vanished in the mountains 7 days ago. The golden dragon herb stopped mattering in my hand. Mad dog. The bandits on the road had been the warning. Piper entered behind the messenger. Mason Crow, who is Brielle? I tore off Julian's disguise charm. Silver hair darkened. My real face returned. Mason Crow was the tournament name, I told her. I'm Caleb Vane. Mara's eyes narrowed. Piper looked annoyingly pleased that her accent theory had won. I did not stay for the celebration. I left the Empire with the herb, a freed necromancer, and one ugly message. Brielle had been missing in the northern mountains for a week. The assassins I had seen too early were already there. I left the Evermont Empire before the arena workers cleaned my blood from the floor. Scarlet moved through a chain of servants while Mara forced a shortcut through one of her hidden burial routes. By nightfall, the three of us reached the Hartwell search camp in the northern mountains. Brielle had been missing for 7 days. Harper Hartwell met me beside an empty stretcher. She was Brielle's older sister, and the blood dried across her coat belonged to the escorts who had died protecting them. Harper looked at my wounded shoulder, then at the golden dragon herb in my hand. This is my fault, she said. I grabbed the front of her coat. Start with where Brielle is. Harper's mouth shook. She climbed the upper glacier for sun snow. There was sun snow at your estate, Scarlet cut in through her crow. Harper closed her eyes. That tiny reaction answered the question before her mouth did. You hid it, I said. Harper nodded. She had resented Brielle for years. Their mother died when Brielle was born. Their family treated Winterdahl like a curse on the bloodline, and Harper had learned to blame the child carrying it. So when Brielle asked about the stored sun snow, Harper lied. The lie forced Brielle up a lethal mountain for an ingredient meant to help me. Petty cruelty had excellent range. One jealous decision had crossed 2 kingdoms and become a rescue mission. Harper swallowed. The Mad Dog assassins attacked near the summit. Their leader killed the escorts. I slipped near the cliff and Brielle pushed me away from him. She saved you? Harper looked at the snow. She tackled him over the edge with her. The search party had found broken trees, blood, and no bodies. 7 days in that cold had changed the camp's language. The searchers no longer said, "When we find her," they said, "if." Scarlet's crow spread one wing. "The assassin may have survived." "He did," I answered. The Mad Dog leader in Harper's report hunted through sound alone. In my first life, a cliff had only annoyed him. It hadn't finished him. Mara's body blades opened along her arms. "We can raise every corpse in the valley and search through their eyes." Scarlet pecked her forehead. "That includes half the search party if your control slips." I said we can. I didn't say the living would enjoy it. "Both of you stop planning Brielle's backup funeral," I told them. I pointed toward the broken ridge. "Find her heat. I'll follow the blood." 7 days earlier on that glacier, Brielle had become the rescuer first. Harper told me the opening. Brielle explained the rest after we found her. Rex's men attacked from the snow without warning. One escort fell before drawing steel. Another turned toward a false scream and took a blade through the back. Rex Calder, the Mad Dog leader, moved through the storm with a hooked sword and a smile. He had come for valuable Hartwell hostages. Harper ran toward the lower trail. The ice broke beneath her boots. Rex reached for her hair. Brielle hit him from the side. She was 12, half his size, and carrying no weapon. She still drove both of them over the cliff because Harper had one safe step left. That was Brielle. Winterdahl erased the easy expressions. It never erased her choices. She woke below the ridge with cracked ribs, a bleeding leg, and Rex gone from sight. The cold should have killed her before sunrise. Instead, Brielle dragged herself into a cave and opened the survival book she carried everywhere. I had mocked that book once. New personal record for being stupid. The book told her to block the cave mouth, wrap the injured leg, and keep wet clothing away from her skin. Brielle followed every instruction literally. Then she found sun snow growing beneath a rock shelf. The pale fungus released heat when touched. Brielle packed it around her coat and turned the cave into a weak oven. She rationed 2 biscuits for 7 days. She melted snow in a metal cup. Each night she repeated the same promise. 1 month, then come home. I had said it at the manor gate like time obeyed me. Brielle stayed alive to keep her half. On the 7th morning, footsteps entered the cave. Rex Calder ducked beneath the stone opening. The Mad Dog assassin had survived the fall with one injured shoulder and a worse mood. He saw Brielle beside the sun snow and smiled. "There you are," Rex told her, "the emotionless little prize." Brielle reached for a sharpened strip of metal. Rex kicked it away. He dragged her upright by the coat and examined the silver hair clip near her temple. I had given it to her before we separated. Rex pulled it free. Brielle's hand moved faster than it had for the blade. "Return that," she ordered. Rex laughed. "You didn't cry when your guards died. You didn't cry when your sister ran. This piece of metal matters?" He grabbed her hair and forced her face upward. Brielle saw the clip in his hand. Brielle later told me what filled her mind. Cedar Hollow Manor, Walter's soup, stolen cookies, cold hands against my fever, a promise to come home. A tear ran down her cheek. Winterdahl had spent 12 years suppressing everything. Rex made one mistake and proved Winterdahl was already losing. I entered the cave behind him. "Take your hand off my fiancé." Rex turned. His smile vanished first. Brielle looked at me. Her face was bruised, her lips were blue, and her eyes stayed on mine. "You are late," she whispered. 7 days. Noticed." I crossed the cave before Rex could move. My left hand caught Brielle around the waist. I pulled her free and placed her behind me. Scarlet's crow shot through the entrance. Mara followed with her body blade spread. "Protect her," I ordered. Mara lifted Brielle carefully. Scarlet landed against Brielle's shoulder and shielded her from the cave wind. Rex raised the hair clip between 2 fingers. "A Vane heir crossed the Empire for this girl?" I crossed it for her. I held out my hand. "Return my future wife's hair clip." Brielle's eyes moved to my face. Rex tucked the clip inside his coat. He still had time to hand it over and run. Honestly, I don't know what he thought would happen next. Rex drew his hooked sword. The first strike knocked my blade from my hand. He was a master-level assassin. I had stronger techniques, better memories, and a body still below his aura. Rex knew the difference. "You killed boys on the road," he said. "Now you think you can hunt a mad dog? I think you stole from the wrong girl." He snapped his fingers. Sound struck the cave walls from 6 directions. Rex vanished. Phantom Snare turned echoes into false bodies. Every scrape sounded like a blade. Every breath arrived from the wrong place. A hook cut my ribs from behind. I spun toward it. Nothing stood there. Rex's boot hit my chest and drove me across the cave. Sixth Sense normally read aura beyond sight. Phantom Snare poisoned the timing by making my body react to sound before the aura reached me. Rex attacked again. This time, I let the false scream pass through me. Sixth sense spread into the stone beneath my feet. Echoes lied. Weight did not. The floor dipped behind my left heel. I turned and drove the 1-inch punch into Rex's ribs. The impact folded him across my fist and threw him into the cave wall. Stone cracked. Rex coughed blood and smiled anyway. The punch hurt him. It did not finish him. He drove both hands into the wall. Phantom axes formed from compressed sound and dropped through the cave. I dodged the first. Sixth sense redirected the second. The third cut my thigh. My aura drained with every defense. Scarlet watched from Brielle's shoulder. "Help me," I told her. "No." Mara looked at the crow. "He is missing several important pieces." "He chose this fight," Scarlet answered. "If I solve every ceiling, he remains mediocre forever." The immortal crow had found a terrible moment for educational integrity. Rex heard her and laughed. "Even your master knows you lose." I stood straight. 3 seconds, I said. Rex's smile weakened. Burning breach burned stored erosion and inferno together. At my current limit, my body could survive 3 seconds. After that, the heat would destroy whatever part failed first. I released it. Black fire covered my skin. First second. The nearest phantom axe shattered against my shoulder. I crossed the cave before Rex finished inhaling. My blade reached his neck. Rex screamed. The sound hit my inner ear like a hammer. Phantom snare inverted the cave. My finishing cut missed by 1 inch and carved through the wall instead. Rex escaped behind me. First finisher gone. Second. He drove the hooked sword toward my spine. I compressed bloodfall corruption through my right arm. Cursed steel hardened the limb from shoulder to fingertips. Scarlet had warned me about the price. The arm could block 1 lethal attack. It might not remain an arm afterward. The hook struck my forearm and stopped. Rex's eyes widened. I trapped his weapon, turned beneath his shoulder, and cut through his sword arm. The stolen hair clip flew from his coat. I caught it with my left hand. Third second. Rex staggered backward and opened his mouth for another scream. Absolute sixth sense shut out every echo. For that instant, the cave became weight, heat, breath, and one real body. I stepped through the sound. Black flame crossed Rex from hip to shoulder. The mad dog assassin fell in 2 directions and stopped moving. Burning breach ended. The black fire disappeared. So did the feeling in my right hand. I looked down. Cursed steel had held long enough to win. The arm beneath it had burned black, cracked, and separated below the shoulder. My right arm hit the snow. The hair clip stayed inside my left fist. Then I fell beside it. Mara caught me before my head struck stone. Scarlet moved from Brielle to my shoulder and forced a thin pulse of regeneration through the wound. It stopped the bleeding. It couldn't restore the limb. Brielle reached for me from Mara's arms. I placed the hair clip into her palm. "Found it," I told her. Her fingers closed around mine. The cave went dark. While I was unconscious, my first life dragged me back to Brielle's other ending. Years after Ravenhall Academy, the Hartwell family collapsed under enemies I failed to stop. Brielle lost her home, her family, and every protection attached to her name. I found her after the damage was done. Winterdahl still suppressed her emotions. I believed removing it would free her, so I took the curse too quickly. Every feeling it had buried returned at once. Grief for her mother, rage at her family, fear from every battlefield, love she had never learned to hold. The flood broke through years of control and turned her cold power violent. Brielle became the White Demon. I watched armies retreat from her. I watched allies call her a monster. I kept telling myself emotion was better than emptiness while she drowned inside both. Near the end of the war, I found her wounded beyond healing. Brielle looked at me and asked one question. "Caleb, which hurts more, feeling everything or feeling nothing?" I didn't have an answer before she died. When I woke in the current timeline, mourning filled a room at the Hartwell estate. My right shoulder ended beneath clean bandages. Brielle sat beside the bed wearing the silver hair clip again. She had washed the blood from it. "You returned it," she said. "I promised more sandwiches too. You lost the arm that makes sandwiches. The left one remains dangerously qualified." Brielle's mouth moved. The corners lifted with visible effort. "I am trying to smile," she reported. "It looks painful." "It is practice. That was the first playful thing either of us managed after the mountain." Then Brielle placed her cold hand over mine. "I cried in the cave," she said. "I was afraid I would never return to Cedar Hollow. I wanted Walter's soup and your complaints. More than anything, I wanted to know what happiness feels like without guessing." Her fingers tightened. "I want to smile beside you, cry beside you, and feel all of it." Brielle looked directly at me. "Please restore my emotions." Shadowclaim rose between our hands. The silver lock over Winterdahl appeared. "Become her most important person." The words broke apart. The second condition was complete. Winterdahl remained inside Brielle. Another lock still protected the final transfer, and the memory of the White Demon sat between my hand and her request. Brielle had chosen me. I closed my hand around hers. "We'll go home together. I won't rush the last lock." Now I had to make sure my answer did not destroy her. Harper entered later that morning. She stopped several steps from the bed and bowed to Brielle. I hid the sun's snow, Harper confessed. You saved me anyway. I have no right to ask, but I am sorry. Brielle watched her without changing expression. Harper waited for forgiveness like it was another family order. I cut that off. Brielle owes you nothing. Harper looked at me. She decides whether you become her sister again, I continued. You do not decide when her pain becomes inconvenient. Brielle kept hold of my hand. I will decide later, she told Harper. Harper nodded and left without arguing. Good. Guilt had finally taught her how to obey a boundary. Before we returned home, I gave the Hartwell family one warning. If anyone here treats Brielle like a transferable curse again, I will sink this estate into the mountain. Nobody asked whether a 13-year-old could do it. The missing arm made the threat much more convincing. I had rescued Brielle. Rex was dead. The second winter doll lock had opened. The bill sat beside me in an empty sleeve. Normal healing could close the wound. It couldn't give me another arm. Scarlet knew one possible replacement. It belonged to a dead swordsman whose draw had once terrified the world. At the Hartwell estate, every healer agreed on the same cheerful fact. My right arm was gone, so I asked Scarlet for the preserved limb of the sword demon. Scarlet's crow stopped pecking the window frame. The sword demon had served her for most of his life. Before age finally killed him, he left his body in Scarlet's care with one request: if someone worthy appeared, let his sword art move again. Scarlet had preserved the arm ever since. You're a cold little accountant, she told me. You lose one limb and immediately inventory the dead. I am honoring his last request. You're stealing his arm, with respectful intent. Mara leaned against the wall. I can attach it. Scarlet's feathers rose. You sound too eager. I've been a necromancer for 1,000 years. Finally, someone is asking for the service on purpose. The procedure had one ugly rule. Mara could connect dead tissue, and bloodfall venom could force my body to accept it. I had to remain conscious and control every surge myself. If I passed out, the corpse arm could reject me or mutate. Comforting. Before Scarlet answered, a Hartwell servant entered the room. Miles Hartwell requests Brielle in the family chamber. Brielle stood from beside my bed. Her older brother had waited until the rescue was complete before trying to turn it into politics. Naturally, the next morning in the Hartwell family chamber, Miles sat behind the family seal like inherited furniture made him taller. Miles Hartwell was Brielle's older brother and the acting authority while their father remained absent. Harper stood near him with her eyes lowered. Brielle stood alone before the table. Miles tapped the engagement document. House Vane now considers Caleb valuable. The original match was arranged when both of you were burdens. Circumstances changed. Brielle's face stayed still. What are you ordering? You will surrender the engagement to Harper. Harper looked up sharply. Miles, he cut her off. Harper is older. She carries no curse. The alliance becomes stronger. There it was. Brielle survived starvation, saved Harper, and watched me lose an arm for her. Her family responded by trying to upgrade the fiancé slot. Romance by committee. Very warm people. Brielle placed one hand over the engagement seal. Miles's voice hardened. Refusal means disinheritance. Then disinherit me. Harper moved toward her. Brielle did not look away from Miles. I chose Caleb, she said. You cannot transfer that choice. I entered before Miles could answer. My empty sleeve hung beneath my coat. The room noticed it before anyone noticed my face. Excellent meeting, I said. I especially enjoyed the part where you rewarded Brielle by replacing her. Miles rose. This is a Hartwell matter. I am the matter you are trading. He looked at my shoulder. The Hartwell family will compensate House Vane for your injury. Good, that saves time. I placed 2 letters on the table. Rumors had already spread across Westmark Kingdom. The first story said, I crossed 2 kingdoms and lost an arm for the fiancé I chose. The second said, the Hartwell family planned to offer Harper as an upgraded replacement, and I had refused before they could ask. Neither rumor had come from me. Rumors rarely needed help. They only needed a room with bored nobles. I tapped the first letter. Keep Brielle in the engagement, pay for my recovery, and your family becomes loyal enough to honor the girl who saved its heir. Then I tapped the second. Replace her, and you confirm that the Hartwell family tried to trade sisters while Brielle's mountain wounds were still open. Miles stared at the pages. Which humiliation would you like attached to the family crest? I asked. Harper covered her mouth. Brielle looked at me. Did you prepare those before entering? I had one arm and several minutes. That was enough? Your brother made it easy. Miles's authority lasted until he imagined the gossip reaching House Vane. Then his shoulders dropped. Brielle keeps the engagement, he said. The Hartwell family will fund the healing and record it as family support. I pointed toward Brielle. Ask her. Miles's jaw tightened. He looked at his younger sister. Brielle, do you wish to keep the engagement? One complete collapse. Miles pressed the family seal onto the document. Brielle kept her choice. Harper escaped becoming a replacement. The Hartwell family paid for an arm it didn't know came from a corpse. Everyone won except Miles's dignity. Back in my room, I tested the limits of fighting one-handed. The first draw twisted my balance, the second left my right side open, the third sent my practice sword across the floor. Brielle picked it up. "You are worse," she reported. "Temporary setback. Your right sleeve disagrees." She placed her cold palm against my shoulder while I circulated bloodfall venom. Winterdoll lowered the heat immediately. That confirmed the larger problem. Burning Breach produced more heat than my body could survive. Winterdoll helped from outside, but I needed a cold constitution inside my own blood. In my first life, Evan Ashburn was a young heir from a famous fire family, and he possessed exactly that. Moon-cold body prevented him from using his family's fire. For me, it could stop Burning Breach from cooking my organs. First, I needed an arm capable of holding a sword. Inside Mara's tree space that evening, roots formed the walls and black branches carried preserved bodies beyond sight. Number 8 waited beside a stone table. The rabbit-eared servant was strong enough to restrain a master and looked deeply offended by the assignment. Mara placed the preserved arm beside me. It looked ordinary until Scarlet uncovered the hand. The fingers held a permanent sword callus. Even dead, the muscles rested near a draw position. Scarlet stood in a human avatar for the procedure. Her hand remained on the sword demon's wrist for one quiet second. "He wanted the art to continue," she said. "I will make it move," I promised. Scarlet looked at me. "Do not make me regret giving a mediocre disciple expensive parts." There was the affection. Buried under several feet of insult, but technically present. Number 8 locked my left wrist and chest against the table. Mara raised one body blade. "Stay conscious." Wonderful bedside manner. Dead patients complain less. Then the graft began. Pain erased the room. The preserved arm touched my shoulder, and bloodfall venom attacked it like an invader. Black veins spread across the new skin. The fingers bent backward. The elbow twisted toward the wrong angle. I forced erosion through the dead channels one line at a time. Each line burned open. My heart skipped. Number 8 tightened the restraints. Mara told me to circulate again. I did. The corpse arm rejected the third cycle. I drove Inferno through the shoulder and burned away the dead corruption before it reached my chest. Scarlet's hand closed around my jaw. "Stay awake. I'm enjoying this immensely." That sentence was almost convincing. The 5th bloodfall cycle reached the fingertips. The hand opened. Then it closed because I ordered it to. The black veins faded. Mara released one restraint and placed a sword hilt in the new palm. My fingers wrapped around it. The sword demon's arm belonged to my body. The pain remained very committed. After the graft, Scarlet brought me to an empty clearing inside the tree space. "Draw," she ordered. I placed the sword into a sheath. The new arm moved before my mind finished the command. Steel left the sheath with enough force to cut a trench through 3 trees. Scarlet stepped aside. The slash passed where she had stood. For one beautiful moment, I thought I had inherited perfection. Then Scarlet tapped my forehead before the blade finished moving. I cut 3 trees. A patient corpse could have dodged. The sword demon's muscles remembered thousands of draws. My aura control did not. His quick draw packed tiny grains of aura inside the sheath, then released them at once. I had poured the aura in like a flood. Massive output, terrible speed, legendary arm acquired, mastery sold separately. Mara stayed in the north to watch the Poison King, a future enemy tied to the Hartwell family's collapse. Scarlet, Brielle, and I returned to Cedar Hollow Manor 3 days later. Walter met us at the gate wearing plain clothes instead of House Vane colors. He had deliberately accepted blame for my unexplained movements, hidden training, and disappearance after Blackridge Mountain. The main family dismissed him from formal Vane service and believed my household had lost its organizer. Walter bowed as if nothing had changed. "Your steward position?" I asked. "Officially gone. And unofficially?" "I prepared dinner. Excellent. Rebellion with soup." Walter's false dismissal had misled the main house, but it also attracted an evaluator. "A chief evaluator arrives this week," he warned. "House Vane wants to decide whether you remain in exile or become a direct heir." Before I could answer, a wooden sword touched the back of my neck. Sloane Vane had crossed the kingdom after hearing the mountain rumors and entered the manor without anyone seeing her. My genius older sister stood behind me in a travel coat, smiling at Brielle. "I'm not here to steal your wife," Sloane announced. Brielle moved closer to my side. "You could not." Sloane's smile widened. "I like her." "Wasn't consulted," I said. "No one asked you. Sibling affection, violent and efficient." Then Sloane released her aura. The front hall groaned under the pressure. Walter stepped back. Brielle's frost spread across the floor. Sloane's eyes changed. Star Eye saw flaws inside aura. Her gaze followed the black corruption running through my veins and stopped at the grafted shoulder. "What did you put inside yourself?" she asked. "Full answer." Sloane raised the wooden sword. "Then show me everything you can use." The mock duel began in the manor yard. Sloane gave me one rule: reach her neck before she broke mine. Very supportive sister. I had 3 seconds of burning breach at my current limit. I spent them 1 second at a time. First burst. Black fire pushed me past her opening cut. I drew with the sword demon arm. Sloane blocked and cracked my wooden blade. The burst ended before heat reached my heart. She attacked again. Her pressure bent my knees. Star Eye followed every corruption channel I tried to hide. Second burst. I let the new arm remember the draw while Sixth Sense read her weight. The blade struck Sloane's wooden weapon at the weak point. Her sword broke in half. Sloane looked at the splintered handle. I touched the aura protecting her wrist with Shadow Claim. Locks covered it instantly. Sloane valued her power far too much for a cheap theft. Good. I only needed the contact to interrupt her rhythm. Third burst. I stepped through the opening and placed my broken blade against her neck. Then my knees hit the ground. Burning breach ended inside the 3-second cap. Blood ran from my nose. The grafted hand shook, but it stayed attached. Sloane looked down at me. You reached my neck, she said. You sound surprised. I was deciding whether to be proud or terrified. Choose proud, it is less work. Sloane lowered the broken weapon. House Vane cannot treat you as harmless anymore. The official family test was scheduled 2 days later. That morning, Julian Marlowe entered Cedar Hollow Manor carrying a gold case like he had personally invented medicine. He had used the golden dragon herb I won in the Empire to complete the formula. I've completed the crying dragon pill, Julian announced. You may thank me dramatically. He grabbed my new arm and inspected the fingers. Brielle stared at his hand. Release my fiancé, she told him. Julian looked delighted. Possessive. Excellent progress. I pulled free. Both of you stop making my organs social. The pill went down like molten gravel. Aura erupted through my body. Bloodfall tried to spread the impurities. Inferno burned them before they settled. Winterdahl cooled my shoulder while Brielle kept one hand against the graft. The pressure broke the training room windows. When it ended, my aura had reached high expert. Julian opened both arms. You survived! Hug your senior! I pointed Inferno at his coat. He lowered the arms. Fast learner! That afternoon at the main Vane estate, my great-aunt Vera Vane waited in the evaluation yard. Vera was a master swordswoman and the chief evaluator deciding my place in the family. She carried an ancient Vane sword older than several family branches. If you fail, Vera told me, your direct heir claim ends here. I didn't know I had one. You earned the problem recently. She drew the ancient sword. One object, one test, much better than a council speech. Vera attacked with master-level force. I took the strike on my sheath and felt the new arm nearly buckle. She pressed harder. A borrowed limb does not make you worthy. Agree. Vera's eyebrow moved. Then I packed granular aura inside the sheath. The sword demon's muscles aligned. Bloodfall supplied force. Moon-cold body was still missing, so I kept burning breach to one final pulse. I drew. The quick draw crossed Vera's guard before she finished the next step. Her ancient sword shattered at the center. Half the blade spun into the dirt. Vera stared at the broken hilt. The attendants behind her stopped writing. Before the strike, I was the exiled failure under evaluation. After it, the evaluator had no sword. Vera lowered the hilt. You pass. I sheathed my blade. I gathered that. I used the victory immediately. Assign me to the Silvercrest Order, the night unit posted near Ashfall Spire. Vera's eyes narrowed. Why there? Erosion activity. Better opponents. Fewer family dinners. A deeper voice answered behind her. Approved! Gareth Vane entered the yard. My father and House Vane's patriarch had ignored most of my childhood. Now he looked at the broken sword, the grafted arm, and the black heat fading from my eyes. The hesitation is gone, Gareth said. You no longer look for permission before you strike. Coming from him, that qualified as a heartfelt speech. Gareth ordered the family party home and confirmed my Silvercrest Order assignment. I had kept Brielle, gained the sword demon's arm, reached high expert, survived Sloane, broken Vera's sword, and finally forced my father to notice me. The assignment gave me exactly what I wanted. Ashfall Spire held the cold constitution that could stabilize burning breach. It also held another person who remembered pieces of the first timeline. I needed to take Evan Ashburn's moon-cold body without letting that watcher realize what I was. 3 weeks later, Brielle and I reached Ashfall City under my Silvercrest Order assignment. Ashfall Spire rose above the city like a red blade. The Ashburn family ruled the region through fire magic, and their patriarch was Graham Ashburn, the Flame King. One of the world's 10 strongest men lived there. So did a memory inheritor I had no intention of meeting. I came for Evan Ashburn's moon-cold body. Then, Scarlet returned from scouting and told me Evan kept trying to kill himself. The theft target had become a rescue before I even reached the front gate. Brielle adjusted the sleeve over my grafted arm. Do not lose this one. I plan to keep at least one complete set. Your plans have a poor survival rate. Scarlet's crow landed on my shoulder. The white bird is correct. Problems follow you like servants. I crossed the city once, and found a suicidal heir, a flame king, and another memory inheritor. The problem magnet record remained undefeated. Scarlet had followed Mina Wells, Evan's loyal maid, through the Ashburn estate. Mina stopped every attempt before Evan died, hid the evidence, and kept begging the family to remove the object they believed was his greatest shame. Moon-cold body made Evan's blood unnaturally cold. The Ashburn family produced fire users. Evan could not create a spark. His family called the physique a curse. I called it the exact thing Burning Breach needed. Scarlet carried one promise back to Mina. I knew how to restore Dahlia. That night behind the Ashburn estate, Mina met me beside a service wall. She was young, exhausted, and carrying a ring of stolen keys beneath her cloak. You know why Evan wants to die? Mina asked. Dahlia Reed disappeared. Mina stopped breathing. Dahlia was the spirit-born girl Evan loved. In my first life, her death destroyed the last reason he had to care about magic or himself. Mina grabbed my coat. She's dead. Her body is gone. Her core remains. Spiritwood bordered the Ashfall region, but its gate required local authorization. Mina could add that authorization to my Silvercrest badge. Help me reach Evan, I told Mina. I will bring Dahlia back. Mina searched my face. What do you want from him? Moon-cold body. Her hand moved toward a knife. I'll take it only if Evan releases it, I added. He chooses the bargain. Mina lowered the blade slowly. Then she pressed the Ashburn investigator seal into my badge. One mark. One forest entry. Find the lake first, she said. Then I'll open his room. The next morning inside Spiritwood, Scarlet and I followed the investigator route toward the inner lake. Brielle remained outside with the order camp. Her cold could steady bloodfall, but bringing her near a hidden memory inheritor created the wrong kind of attention. The forest attacked before we reached the water. Roots tore free from the ground. A pale figure unfolded from the branches with half a face and too many hands. Scarlet's crow went still. A chaos spirit, she said. I remembered the creature from my first life after it grew strong enough to destroy a city. Back then, an entire team had barely contained it. This version was younger. Still ugly. Much better odds. The chaos spirit struck with a wave of broken branches. I drew the sword demon arm and cut through the center. The creature rebuilt itself before the branches hit the ground. Regeneration, it screamed, and the forest answered. Roots wrapped my ankle. A second body formed behind me. Sixth sense caught the weight shift. I burned the roots with Inferno, turned, and drove black flame through the spirit's core. The false body collapsed. The real core tried to flee through the ground. Shadowclaim reached first. Black fingers closed around the regenerative curse inside it. The dying spirit released the power without a lock. Chaos regeneration entered my body. The cut across my ankle closed before my eyes. Fast reward. Horrible owner. Then the spirit's memory passed through Shadowclaim. I saw a young spiritualist standing beside Scarlet's true body centuries earlier. The woman had separated this spirit from herself during a crisis, promised to return, and called for Scarlet when the bond began to fail. Scarlet never reached her in time. The abandoned spirit lost its reason and kept growing around the promise. The memory ended with the young woman asking Scarlet to remember her voice. Scarlet's crow lowered her head. For once, I kept my mouth shut. Scarlet had lived long enough to bury everyone she cared about. The sword demon's arm was only one grave she still carried. She touched the dead spirit with one wing. I remember, Scarlet said. Then she turned toward the inner forest. The lake is ahead. We found it before sunset. A white stone egg rested beneath the water. Spiritwood could rebuild a spirit-born body there. The lake needed Dahlia's surviving core crystal, and someone tied to her strongly enough to call her back. Dahlia's crystal remained inside the Ashburn estate. Evan had to enter the lake himself. Now the rescue had a route. That night in Evan's room, Mina opened the hidden door and let me inside. Evan Ashburn, the teenage heir I had come to save, sat beside an extinguished fireplace. White bandages covered both wrists, and his eyes had stopped reacting to visitors. He looked at my black coat and grafted arm. Are you a demon? Evan asked. A real demon would have taken your limbs before discussing payment. His eyes moved slightly. Good, still listening. I sat across from him. I can restore Dahlia. Evan stood so quickly the chair fell. Do not say her name. I found Spiritwood's lake. Her core is crystallized inside this estate. Put it into the water, enter the ritual, and call her back. Evan grabbed my collar. Cold spread across the fabric. If you are lying, you can kill me after she fails to return. Mina closed the door behind us. I placed Shadowclaim between Evan and me. My price is moon-cold body. You release it willingly. Then you walk into the forest knowing the ritual may kill you. Evan stared at the black hand. You want the thing that ruined my life. I want the thing your family was too stupid to value. He laughed once. The sound had no joy in it. I already planned to die. Then risk your life on a result instead. Evan released my coat. Bring Dahlia back, he said. Take everything else. Mina told me the rest while we prepared. Evan had been born into the strongest fire family in the region. Moon-Cold Body rejected their flames. Graham called his grandson useless in front of the entire estate. Evan's mother, Amelia Ashburn, became cruel whenever Graham watched. Mina had seen Amelia punish him publicly, then sneak medicine into his room at night. She believed harshness kept Graham from deciding Evan had no value at all. It kept Evan alive. It also taught him that love arrived wearing the same face as contempt. Dahlia had changed that. She was a spirit-born student who treated his cold power as beautiful. She taught him to enjoy magic without fire. When she sacrificed herself protecting other students, Evan lost the one person who had never asked him to become someone else. In my first life, he eventually burned Moon-Cold Body out of himself and became the bandaged Flame Emperor. Power arrived after the person he wanted to show it to was gone. This timeline still had another option. The Flame King moved before we could leave quietly. At dawn, inside the Ashburn estate, Graham's guards surrounded Evan's wing. Mina slipped through the servant passage toward the vault holding Dahlia's crystal. Evan and I walked toward the rear gate. Gran Ashburn stepped into the courtyard. The Flame King looked old until his aura arrived. Red pressure filled the estate. Every torch bent toward him. Amelia stood several steps behind her father, hands locked at her sides. Graham looked at Evan. "Return to your room." Evan did not move. Graham's gaze shifted to me. "The Silvercrest Order sends children to interfere with family discipline? I'm here as his investigator. You are here for his physique. The old monster had excellent instincts." Graham lifted one hand. "Fire covered the rear gate and sealed our exit. Moon-Cold Body belongs to the Ashburn family," he said. "The boy carries it because I permit him to breathe." Evan's face emptied again. Graham had sealed the gate and ordered Evan back into his room. Then he claimed the boy's life as family property. I had heard enough. I stepped between them. "He's releasing it." Graham's fire struck. Inferno met it in the courtyard. Red and black flame collided hard enough to blow the windows inward. Mina reached the vault during the impact. She later told me she found Dahlia's white crystal sealed inside a fire shrine, grabbed it with bare hands, and ran while the alarm started. Graham pressed through my inferno. His fire carried more aura than my entire body. The ground melted beneath my boots. Evan placed one cold hand against Shadowclaim. "I release Moon-Cold Body," he said. The silver locks vanished. Black fingers entered his chest and pulled out a sphere of white cold. Graham's expression changed. "Stop! Too late!" Moon-Cold Body entered me. The heat inside Bloodfall dropped instantly. Evan collapsed, then inhaled without frost tearing through his lungs for the first time. I caught him with my grafted arm. Graham stared at his grandson. "You surrendered the only value you had." Evan looked at the rear wall where Scarlet's crow waited. "No," I told Graham. "He trusted a friend." Evan looked at me. His breath caught once, then steadied. Mina burst into the courtyard with Dahlia's crystal. Scarlet's crow took it in her claws and flew towards Spiritwood. Evan ran after her. Graham moved to stop him. I drew my sword. The Flame King had become my problem. At the Spiritwood Lake, Evan followed Scarlet through the trees while Mina guarded his back. He reached the white egg and placed Dahlia's crystal into the water. The lake turned silver. Roots closed around his legs and pulled him waist deep. The ritual began taking his heat, blood, and aura to rebuild the body inside the egg. Evan pressed both hands against the shell. Evan spoke his memories aloud at the lake. Dahlia had taught him his first cold spell and laughed when it froze his own shoes. On the day the Chaos Spirit attacked, she pushed the other students behind her and took the hit. Each memory made the crystal burn brighter. Back at the estate gate, Graham attacked me with enough fire to erase the courtyard. Moon-Cold Body spread through my blood. For the first time, Burning Breach did not roast my organs the instant it opened. I activated the first form. Black flame covered the sword demon arm. Chaos Regeneration closed the skin as Graham's heat split it. I reached his guard and drew. Graham caught the blade between two burning fingers. His smile returned. Then I released the second form. Burning Breach compressed every thread of black flame into the draw. Moon-Cold Body kept the heat away from my heart for one extra beat. The sword cut through Graham's fire and opened a line across his chest. The Flame King stepped back. One of the world's 10 strongest men looked down at his own blood. His smile died. "Beautiful!" At the lake, the white egg cracked. Evan's aura was almost gone. He wrapped both arms around the shell and refused to release it. "Dahlia," he said, "you gave me back magic when my family made me hate it." The crack widened. "I love you, so come back and make me say it where you can answer." The shell opened. A girl with wet silver hair fell into his arms. Dahlia Reed breathed. Evan stopped moving. Dahlia opened her eyes and touched his face. "You took long enough," she whispered. He laughed and cried at the same time. Dahlia pulled him closer and answered the confession with one soft kiss. No joke belonged there. The spirit pressure from her restored body exploded through the Ashfall region. Spiritwood roots broke the estate walls. Lesser spirits rushed toward the lake. Graham looked past me as alarms began across his own city. I stepped backward through the broken gate. "You're leaving?" Graham demanded. "You've got a revived high spirit, collapsing defenses, and several angry forest creatures inside your estate." Black flame covered my sword again. "I'd stay, but this looks like a family matter." Graham attacked. I used Mooncold Body to hold Burning Breach long enough for one final slash. The strike forced him back into the courtyard while Scarlet opened the retreat route. Then I ran. I had wounded the Flame King. Defeating him would have been pride. Escaping with Evan and Dahlia alive was the win. Outside Ashfall City that evening, Evan stood beside Dahlia beneath a borrowed cloak. Mina waited with them, still holding the vault keys she had stolen. Evan looked at his empty palms. "I can't use Mooncold Body anymore." "Learn fire," I told him. "My family said I had no talent for it. Your family also called Mooncold Body useless. Their record is terrible." Dahlia squeezed his hand. "I'll teach you again." Evan nodded. "I'll protect her," he said. "Then I'll enter Ravenhall Academy." "Meet me there," I told him. "We're friends now. That makes avoiding me difficult." Evan smiled. "Deal." Mina bowed. "Thank you for giving him a reason to choose tomorrow." She traveled with us until the Order Road split from the Ashfall region. Then she returned to help Amelia survive Graham's anger and prepare Evan's departure. Scarlet landed on my shoulder as the city disappeared behind us. "Every useful trip ends with a stronger enemy and broken property," she complained. "My property is intact." I drew my sword to prove it. A crack ran from the guard to the tip. The blade split and fell into the road. Scarlet pecked my head. Mooncold Body let my flesh survive more fire. My sword was less fortunate. So the next stop was Clockwork Palace, a self-repairing forge with a legendary weapon on its 8th floor. It had also stolen an entire year of my first life. Back at Cedar Hollow Manor, my sword finished dying on the training floor. I tested one short burst of Burning Breach. Black flame entered the blade. The metal split from guard to tip before I completed the draw. The upper half hit the ground. Scarlet watched from the window in her black crow body. "You broke another one," she observed. "It was already cracked. You are a problem magnet with excuses." I looked at the broken steel. Mooncold Body had finally let my flesh survive more fire. Ordinary weapons had become the weak part of my build. My body had improved so much that my sword became the casualty. Rude. Scarlet hopped onto the broken hilt. Clockwork Palace. I knew the name. Clockwork Palace repaired ordinary damage across 8 shifting floors. Hector Grey blocked the 8th floor route with Skycleaver. Stormstar was a separate prize and the weapon I needed. Scarlet pecked the broken blade. "You will enter a weapon palace without a working weapon." "I still have the arm. The arm has worse fundamentals than your confidence suggests." My immortal crow had been saving that one. Days later, I reached Clockwork Palace with the broken sword tied across my back. The palace rose from a lawless city of workshops, taverns, punishment cages, and failed expeditions. Brass towers shifted above the streets. Damaged walls repaired themselves while people watched. I had spent an entire year there in my first life. My old academy team, led by Ronan Gable, the prodigy who later betrayed me, had entered looking for glory. We lost guides, supplies, and months to the palace's moving routes. The local ruler blocked every useful expedition unless challengers joined his faction or paid him. People were beaten in back rooms while he called the city free. During my first month there, Ryder seized our medicine because we refused his badge. During the third, he locked 2 challengers in a punishment cage after they found a route before him. By the 6th, Ronan's group had started asking Ryder for permission to breathe. I hated him for that year. More importantly, I knew exactly how he fought, boasted, and protected his title. His name was Ryder Knox. In the present timeline, Ryder sat on a metal chair above the central square. Green lightning crawled over his arms. Dozens of fighters stood below him wearing the same smug expression. Ryder called himself the King of Clockwork Palace. Nobody had crowned him. He had simply repeated it until weaker people stopped arguing. The Palace King looked at my broken sword and laughed. One of his followers reached for the weapon on my back. I caught the man's thumb and bent it until he stepped away. Ryder watched his follower retreat. "The square noticed that too." "You came for the 8th floor with that?" Ryder asked. "I came for Stormstar." His followers laughed harder. Ryder leaned forward. "The 8th floor belongs to my people." "Your people have reached it?" The laughter weakened. "Good. We had found the sore spot." Ryder's faction had numbers, supplies, and years of local control. They had still failed to break the final route. I walked into the square and raised my voice. "Beat me, and I'll recommend you for a place among House Vane's knights." The whole square changed. Ryder wanted noble recognition more than money. In my first life, he had built a throne because every great family treated him like a talented stray. I offered him the exact title he wanted. Then I looked over his followers. "Bring the whole Mutt Squad if one king feels nervous." Silence hit first. Then someone in the back repeated, "Mutt Squad!" Ryder stood. Green lightning cracked across the metal chair and split one armrest. That damage repaired itself before it hit the ground. The crowd stepped away from him. Ryder walked down the stairs. You think a Vane name makes you untouchable? No, your bad footwork does. His smile disappeared. I pointed at the square around us. You won't touch me once! Ryder's followers started shouting bets. The duel had become public. Perfect. If I won without witnesses, Ryder could blame luck. If I made a prediction and humiliated him before his own faction, his attachment to green lightning would crack. Shadowclaim liked broken pride. Ryder attacked before anyone called a start. Lightning crossed the square. I moved my head half an inch. His fist passed beside my ear. Ryder turned the miss into a low kick. I stepped over it. He spun and drove an elbow toward my ribs. I leaned back. 3 attacks, no contact. His people stopped laughing. One man lowered the coin he had been waving. Another changed his bet before Ryder saw him. The cheering stopped too. Ryder accelerated. Green lines flashed across the square as he chained punches, knees, and short lightning bursts. I slipped through each opening without drawing the broken sword. He snapped lightning into the floor. The current spread through the metal tiles and forced everyone back. I stepped onto the one repaired seam that carried no charge. Ryder followed with a spinning heel. I caught the wind from it across my cheek and let the strike miss by a finger. His faction started counting his failures out loud. 4, 5, 6. The Mutt Squad had become an audience at its own execution. Ryder slammed both palms together. Lightning rose around me in a circular cage. The crowd shouted because this attack had trapped dozens of challengers before. I watched the current jump between the repaired floor seams. One seam flickered late. I stepped through that gap before the cage closed. Ryder's lightning crushed empty air. A woman near the front lowered the faction banner she had been holding. He cut left. I was already right. He struck high. I ducked before his shoulder moved. Ryder jumped back. You studied me. Your style is very memorable. He looked toward the crowd for support. Half his people avoided his eyes. The other half watched my feet, trying to learn why their king kept swinging at air. Ryder still owned his lightning. I was taking the room. I had watched that style for a year while he obstructed every route we needed. Ryder always loaded his right heel before changing direction. His lightning flared at the wrist before a feint. When his pride cracked, he attacked the face. He had not changed any of it yet. Ryder heard the crowd whispering and aimed directly at my face. There it was. I activated Burning Breach for 1 second. Moon-cold body cooled the surge. Sixth Sense mapped his lightning. The sword demon arm caught his wrist before the strike finished. Ryder's eyes widened. Shadowclaim touched the green current. Silver locks appeared around it. The locks shook. Public inferiority had weakened his attachment, but the power still belonged to him. I released his wrist before Shadowclaim took anything. Ryder mistook that restraint for failure. He smiled and poured every remaining spark into one straight charge. Honestly, I don't know what he thought would happen. I had promised the result out loud and spent the whole duel proving it. He charged anyway. I stepped inside his lightning and drove my heel into his chest. The kick lifted Ryder from the ground. Green lightning burst around him too late. I used the sword demon arm to turn his wrist and send the current into the ceiling instead of the crowd. He flew backward over his own followers and crashed through the metal chair. The throne repaired beneath him. Ryder stayed folded inside it. His Mutt Squad stared at their king lying inside the seat he had built for himself. One outsider laughed, then another. A fighter near the front removed Ryder's faction badge and dropped it. The square had moved before Ryder could stand. I faced the crowd. I'm going to the 8th floor, I announced. I need a guide, a healer, and people who can fight without hiding behind a chair. Several hands rose immediately. A guide from the outer camps pushed through Ryder's people. 2 healers followed. Fighters who had paid his faction for years began asking me when we left. One of Ryder's own men looked at the repaired throne, then joined my line. Ryder dragged himself from the broken throne. Blood darkened his lip, but his eyes remained sharp. You think you took my palace? He asked. I took your audience. That hurt worse. Ryder looked at the fighters gathering behind me. Then he looked at the green lightning still wrapped around his hands. His pride had cracked enough to shake the locks. The lightning stayed with him. Good. I needed him alive and chasing me. Ryder pointed toward the palace entrance. My faction leaves tonight. We'll reach the 8th floor first. His remaining followers rallied around the challenge. The insult had become a team name before sunset. I heard one of them shout that the Mutt Squad would bite back. Petty labels had consequences. Beautiful ones. Across the square, a woman carrying a plain training sword had watched the entire duel without cheering. When Ryder ordered his rival expedition to move, she stepped away from his crowd and walked toward mine. My public win had opened the palace. It had also started a race. The morning after Ryder's defeat, the woman with the training sword found me at the Clockwork Palace gate. Her name was Kira Cole. She was the palace's best swordswoman, once called its light before repeated expedition failures drove her out of the climb. Ryder built a faction from the survivors. Kira kept training alone while everyone else accepted his throne. Now she held out one hand. I'm joining your 8th floor expedition, Kira told me. Ryder will call you a traitor. He called himself a king. His judgment is already compromised. Good answer. I clasped her wrist. Behind Kira, several palace fighters went quiet. Leaving Ryder after a public defeat was one thing. Joining the person who caused it made the choice permanent. Ryder's people watched from the opposite gate. Kira did not look back. Welcome to the winning Mutt squad. Kira pulled her hand away. Call me that again and I'll train your face. Alliance established. A professional guide joined us at the first checkpoint. Dean Archer carried the route map and knew which palace corridors shifted each hour. Our healer arrived separately. Phoebe Lane wore white travel robes and immediately inspected the cracked sword on my back. You brought broken steel into a weapon dungeon? Phoebe asked. It has emotional value. It has 2 pieces. Scarlet's crow landed on my shoulder. Mediocre judgment from my mediocre disciple. 3 against 1 before we entered. Excellent teen culture. Ryder's rival expedition crossed the opposite gate before ours. His followers wore the Mutt Squad insult like a challenge now. Ryder led them with green lightning flashing around his fists. He looked at Kira beside me. You picked him? Ryder asked. Kira rested her sword across one shoulder. He reached the floor faster than your throne did. Ryder entered without another word. The race began. On Clockwork Palace's first floor, brass rabbits attacked in packs. They looked ridiculous until one kicked a challenger through a stone wall. Another opened its metal mouth and fired a cluster of needles. Phoebe raised a white barrier long enough for Dean to pull the wounded challenger clear. The rabbits repaired while attacking. That was the palace's favorite joke. Every mistake returned with fresh screws. Kira walked into the swarm with no visible aura. Her sword moved 6 times. 6 rabbits fell apart before their metal feet touched the floor. Their bodies began repairing immediately. Screws reversed, plates pulled together. The palace rebuilt ordinary damage within seconds. Dean pointed toward the staircase. We move before they stand. I drew the usable half of my sword and attacked the next pack. Predictive blade found every opening. The sword demon arm supplied speed. Inferno erased 2 machines at once. Kira still reached the stairs first. She looked at the mark my blade left in the floor. Kira tapped the cut with her toe. You waste movement. I killed them. Kira handed back my sword. You swung around them first. I prefer drama, she pointed at my stance. You prefer compensating. That woman had known me for 20 minutes and already found violence. Kira knocked my sword aside before the next rabbit reached us. Then she cut the machine through its neck joint with one plain movement. The broken pieces started crawling together. Your powers cover the mistake, Kira told me. The mistake remains. Kira took my broken sword, placed it in my left hand, and adjusted my stance. Swing! Did. She struck my wrist with the flat of her blade. The sword fell. Phoebe looked away very quickly. Scarlet stared directly at me. Mediocre! Look, stolen powers had carried me through monsters, assassins, and the Flame King. Kira needed one basic swing to expose the embarrassing part. I had legendary muscle memory. My fundamentals still belonged to a 13-year-old with terrible natural talent. So, I picked up the sword. Train me every day, I told Kira. No aura, no stolen powers. She raised one eyebrow. You can admit weakness? Only when weaponized. Kira pointed at my feet. Then start with the swing you keep doing wrong. For more than a month, we climbed and trained at the same time. Each morning before the palace moved, Kira stripped every advantage away. No inferno, no sixth sense, no sword demon burst. On the first morning, she disarmed me 12 times. On the 5th, I forced her to move 1 foot. On the 12th, I landed a clean tap on her sleeve. She responded by hitting me hard enough to make Phoebe check my teeth. Progress had a strange sense of humor. She corrected my heel, then my shoulder, then the way I tightened before impact. I collected bruises with professional consistency. Each afternoon, the palace tested whether the corrections survived pressure. On the 3rd floor, I stopped overreaching and cut a machine through its moving joint. On the 4th, Kira stopped covering my left side because I finally stopped exposing it. On the 5th, we crossed positions without speaking and dropped 2 armored constructs back to back. Ryder's expedition stayed close enough that we saw their campfires through repaired walls. Neither group could rest without hearing the other move. The Palace King had lost his square. He refused to lose the race. Twice, his faction took supplies from shared checkpoints before we arrived. Once, they sealed a staircase behind them and made Dean find another route. Ryder couldn't beat me in public, so he tried to beat the clock. Fair enough. I respected spite when it stayed productive. More than a month after entering, we reached the 6th floor. A wave of clockwork soldiers poured from the forge corridor. Kira moved first. I followed her rhythm. She cut high. I stepped through the opening and struck low. She turned my missed angle into a second cut. I used Sixth Sense only after the formation changed, then gave her the safe route with one word. Let up! Kira trusted it. We crossed through the center together. 10 machines dropped before Dean finished warning us about the rear line. The final construct rebuilt its arm and tried one desperate strike from the floor. I caught the wrist without looking. Kira cut the power core at the same moment. The machine stopped between us. Dean lowered the route map. He had spent weeks treating my directions as dangerous guesses. After that exchange, he started asking me which corridor felt wrong before checking the page. Phoebe healed one shallow cut on Kira's shoulder and stared at the field. Phoebe lowered her healing hand. "You two rehearsed that?" Kira cleaned her blade. "He finally learned to swing." "High praise," I said. "Write it down." Kira looked at the black flame on my grafted arm. "You said you steal powers." "I do." Kira tilted her head. "And you asked me to teach you things you could copy. I plan to steal everything you know." Her hand tightened around the sword. I stopped joking. "The world ends in a few years," I told her. "I remember it happening. Every technique I take gives humanity one more chance when erosion swallows the kingdoms." Dean stopped folding the route map. Phoebe stared at Scarlet's crow. Kira watched my face for a long moment. "You expect me to believe that?" she asked. "No, I expect you to watch what happens next and decide." Kira slid her sword into its sheath. "I already decided when I left Ryder's crowd," she said. "If the world is ending, stop wasting your shoulder on that swing." Kira turned back to my stance and corrected my shoulder. She stayed. The 7th floor tried to break the partnership the next day. Clockwork Palace's moving labyrinth shifted every 12 seconds. Dean led us through the first rotation while Ryder's faction moved on a parallel route beyond the brass walls. Then someone on Ryder's side struck the central pressure plate. Dean had warned both groups that the plate controlled the next rotation. Ryder's people hit it early to cut us off from the final route. The floor snapped sideways. Walls rose between our groups. Another wall separated Dean and Phoebe from Kira and me. Dean shouted a route number before the metal sealed him away. The map was gone with him. Kira grabbed my coat. "Can you read the walls?" Sixth sense spread through the floor. Every moving panel carried a different weight. The lighter walls would turn first. The heavy ones hid dead corridors. "Yes!" The corridor began closing. Kira crouched. "Get on!" I stared at her back. "I can run." Kira looked back at me. "Your directions are useful. Your short legs are not." Brutal. Also correct. I climbed onto her back. Kira ran as the walls rotated around us. Behind us, a brass wall crushed the empty corridor into a dead end. Ahead, the floor opened in strips. Missing one turn meant falling into the palace's lower machinery and losing days to the reset route. "Right in 3 steps," I told her. She turned before the floor vanished. "Duck!" A brass beam passed over us, left after the red panel. Kira jumped the gap and landed on the moving wall itself. "You're enjoying this," she accused. "I'm enjoying being taller." Kira adjusted her grip. "I can drop you." Straight for 6 steps. She kept running. Piggyback diplomacy had succeeded. We reached the 8th floor access corridor before the next full rotation. A pressure wave rolled through the brass walls. Kira pulled me behind a carriage partition, and we stayed low as someone entered the 8th floor carrying enough weapons to arm a regiment. Scarlet's crow went still on my shoulder. The woman was tall, adult, and marked by striped corruption along her arms. Blades, chains, spears, and shields floated around her without touching the ground. Talia Stroud belonged to the Stroud clan and ranked among the strongest world corruptors alive. People called her the weapons maniac. She had come for Stormstar. Scarlet lowered her voice. "Don't negotiate. She values weapons more than lives." Talia turned one blade toward the Guardian route and moved on. I could have left. Stormstar affected humanity's future. Giving it to her would create another disaster before the apocalypse arrived. So Kira and I followed her through the carriage path. The next chamber held several narrow doors, each showing a different patch of real sky. One opened onto a snowy cliff. Another showed a desert road. A third looked down over an ocean. Cross one, and Clockwork Palace ejected you into the location beyond it. I needed to confirm the weakness before Talia reached the final route. Kira cut an ordinary side door. The metal repaired itself at once. I touched another door with Inferno. Black fire ate through the hinges. The burned frame stayed empty. Cold air poured through from the snowfield outside. Anything forced across that threshold would leave Clockwork Palace immediately. One burned door had just become more useful than an entire strategy meeting. Kira looked from the missing door to me. "You expected that." "I lost a year here. I learned something." Beyond the moving wall, Ryder's faction started cheering. They had reached the Guardian corridor first. Ryder shouted that the 8th floor belonged to the Mutt Squad. Talia heard him. Then the weapons maniac walked toward the celebration. By the time Kira and I reached the 8th floor Guardian route, Talia had already destroyed Ryder's celebration. Several Mutt Squad fighters lay broken or unconscious across the brass floor. 2 survivors dragged a third toward an open carriage exit. One fighter had lost his weapon arm. Another could not stand. Their healer crawled between them with blood on her white sleeve, trying to keep everyone breathing. The local race had turned into a massacre before either faction reached Stormstar. Ryder stood between Talia and the retreat. His coat had burned away at one shoulder. Green lightning flashed unevenly around his body. Every breath made him lean harder on one leg. The palace king looked terrible. He also stayed upright. "Move the wounded first!" Ryder shouted at his people. "Anyone who can walk, cover someone who can't!" The order surprised me. I had no time to examine it yet. Talia swung a floating hammer. A wounded fighter tried the block for Ryder. Ryder shoved him toward the exit and crossed both arms himself. He took the impact. Green lightning burst from his body. The blow drove him across the corridor, but it gave his people time to move. Then Ryder planted his feet and gathered every remaining spark into one strike. The green bolt filled the hall. Talia raised a mirrored shield. The shield swallowed the green bolt without slowing. Every line of lightning reversed across its surface. Ryder saw it happen and tried to cancel the strike. Talia closed her hand first. Ryder's own lightning turned around. It hit him in the chest and launched him through a carriage wall. His strongest attack had become her warm-up. Talia moved to finish him. I activated 1 second of Burning Breach and crossed the gap. The sword demon arm caught her descending blade. Moon-cold body kept the black fire away from my heart. Sixth sense screamed under the pressure. The floor cracked beneath my feet. Kira pulled Ryder from the impact zone. A spear followed them. I twisted the sword demon arm and knocked it into the wall. The impact cracked my wrist. Chaos regeneration closed the damage before Talia's next weapon arrived. Talia looked at me. "Move." "No." Her floating weapons turned toward my throat. I glanced at Ryder. Green lightning still flickered around his hand. That power was one reason I had kept him alive. I dragged Ryder farther behind me and closed the route to his body. Useful people were still people. Talia followed my gaze. "You want his ability?" "I do." "Then let him die and take it." Shadow Claim tightened beneath my skin. That option would have been efficient. It also sounded exactly like Adrian. I stepped between Ryder and the weapons maniac. "Talia Stroud, Stormstar is mine," I told her. "His lightning is also mine to steal later. You get neither." Ryder coughed from the floor. I did not agree to that. "Survive long enough to complain." Talia's eyes narrowed. Kira raised her sword. "Caleb, her weapons are splitting!" 3 copies peeled away from Talia's shadow. Each clone carried part of her arsenal. The first wore her blades. The second dragged the mirrored shield. The third carried a chain wrapped around the heavy axe. Destroying a clone would only return the weapons to her. Letting them roam would kill the wounded. Talia had turned one impossible opponent into 4 active problems. One rushed Kira and Ryder. Another moved toward the remaining fighters. The third blocked the route to Stormstar. The real Talia stayed with me. Kira drew her sword and chased the first clone into the side corridor. Ryder forced himself up and followed. The shield clone drove the wounded fighters toward a narrowing exit. Ryder's people formed a line around them and started calling each other mutts like the insult had become a promise. One of them shouted for Ryder to stay back. Ryder ignored him and disappeared after Kira. I wanted to stop him. Talia attacked before I could. A spear crossed my shoulder. Chaos regeneration closed the first tier. A chain wrapped my grafted wrist. I burned it away with Inferno. Talia switched weapons before I finished recovering. A shield edge struck my jaw. I hit the carriage floor and tasted blood. She had no rhythm to memorize because every weapon changed the range. Sixth sense kept me alive. Kira's month of basic footwork kept me standing. Before her next spear reached me, I shortened my step exactly as Kira had drilled. The point missed my heart and cut my coat instead. One boring correction had just saved my life against a world corruptor. Kira was never allowed to hear how satisfying that felt. Talia watched the black flame. "You know my name," she said. "You use corruption like a human. Which world made you?" She assumed I was another corruptor wearing a boy's body. Fair mistake. My build had become suspicious even to me. "I'm from Westmark," I answered. Talia lowered a spear toward me. "That is not what I asked. It is all you get." Talia launched 6 weapons at once. I retreated into the carriage chamber. A sword cut past my head. I answered with black flame. The fire missed Talia and erased the first door beside her. The blackened frame stayed empty and showed a snowfield beyond it. Talia checked her step 1 inch from the threshold. She had seen the ejection route. She smiled. Poor aim. I moved toward the next carriage. A hammer broke my guard. The impact sent me through a wooden bench. The bench repaired around my coat and trapped me for half a second. Talia used that half second to drive a dagger toward my eye. I tore free, let the blade score my cheek, and kicked the carriage latch behind her. Chaos regeneration pulled my ribs back into place while moon-cold body cooled the next surge. Talia walked through the wreckage. "You are loud for prey," she said. I wiped blood from my mouth. "You carry an entire weapon shop and still fight like a noisy kitten." Her smile vanished. There it was. Apex monster. Same pride problem. Talia fired a ring of blades. I ducked the first 3, caught the 4th with the broken sword, and used Burning Breach to cut through the rest. Black flame crossed another carriage door. The frame stayed empty. 2 exits gone. One of Ryder's wounded fighters crawled through a remaining door and vanished to safety. Talia saw the escape and hurled a spear after him. I knocked it aside. Talia noticed the missing metal. She stopped chasing for the first time. Her floating weapons spread between the surviving exits, guarding the thing I appeared to be destroying. Her next attack ignored me and cut toward the doors. Good. She was guarding my targets now. She had understood enough to become careful. So I made her angry again. You came all this way for Stormstar, I told her. Now you're guarding furniture. Talia charged. A floating shield smashed me into the next carriage. I rolled under a spear, drove my grafted fist into the floor, and released Inferno through the wall. Talia caught my ankle and dragged me back before the fire finished. I used the pole, spun under her guard, and burned the frame with my free hand. A third exit burned away. The palace tried to rebuild the carriage around it. The blackened frame refused. Kira's sword rang somewhere beyond the corridor. Ryder's lightning answered once, then vanished beneath an explosion. I could not see them. I could only keep Talia here. She rotated weapons faster. A chain caught my ankle. A blade opened my side. A hammer forced me against the last row of doors. Chaos regeneration repaired damage as quickly as it could. It could not replace aura. Burning Breach ate through that supply with every burst. Talia remained stronger, faster, and almost impossible to injure. I stopped trying to wound her. I burned the 4th door, then the 5th. Each missing exit narrowed the chamber. Talia's posture changed. She looked past me and finally counted what remained. 1 door. Beyond it waited a rocky valley under a distant evening sky. Cross that threshold and Clockwork Palace would throw her into the real location, far from Stormstar. Talia recalled every floating weapon to her body. Striped corruption spread across her face and arms. Her frame expanded. The arsenal fused around her into one massive spear. Scarlet's crow shouted from the broken carriage. Caleb, she is transforming! I noticed. The problem magnet joke had reached its final boss. Talia lowered the spear. Her voice turned flat. You planned this? I planned one useful door, she charged. The carriage floor folded beneath her first step. The spearhead tore through every defense I raised. My broken sword shattered completely. The impact drove the remaining steel into the wall. Talia's spear opened the grafted palm and pushed toward my chest. I gave ground until my heel touched the final threshold. She thought she had trapped me against the only exit. That was the position I needed. I opened Burning Breach's second form. Inferno entered the sword demon arm. Mooncold body held the heat away from my organs. Sixth sense found the exact line between Talia, the spear, and the final exit. Chaos regeneration closed my hand as the pressure split it. Every stolen power moved together. I drew once. Black fire struck Talia's spear and exploded through her guard. The mirrored force snapped back along my slash. Mooncold body held the burst open for one more heartbeat. I twisted the sword demon wrist and redirected the rebound into Talia's center. The stronger corruptor crossed the last threshold backward. Clockwork Palace caught her body and ejected her into the distant valley. Talia fell through open sky, still alive. Her voice reached me before the door closed. Talia shouted, I will come back for Stormstar in your head. Take a number. I slammed the final door shut. The carriage sealed. Talia was gone from the palace. The corridor went silent except for damaged machinery rebuilding itself. The palace repaired benches, walls, and broken brass around me. The 5 inferno-burned exits stayed missing. Stormstar remained ahead, unclaimed. Her weapon clones vanished with her. I ran toward the side corridor where Kira had disappeared. Kira was kneeling beside Ryder behind a wrecked carriage. Ryder's body was covered in burns and deep cuts. His green lightning hand had gone dark. 3 of his fighters were alive behind him because he had forced them through an exit first. Kira looked up at me. Her clone came for me. Ryder took the strike and pushed me clear. The man I remembered as a selfish palace king had protected Kira and his comrades while I was away. I had reduced Ryder to the worst version I remembered, which made me no better than Adrian.